Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending. Our deputy clerk is going to tell you all about it.
Oh, my goodness. All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to remind everybody that we are being televised tonight, and that if you wish to speak tonight and you're not on the agenda, if you could please fill out a form, and then we will have it to be presented to us, and you'll be able to speak. Tonight is the regular workshop meeting of the mayor and the city council of Prospect Heights, held on Monday, November 11th, 2019, at 6:30 PM in the council chambers, Prospect Heights City Hall, 8 North Elmhurst Road, Prospect Heights, and Mayor Nicholas J. Helmer presiding.
Did you get it all?
Oh, all right. That
All right,
last
you
paragraph.
forgot to say your name.
Oh, I'm the deputy clerk, Karen Schulteis.
All right, thank you, Karen. You did a
Thanks.
great job.
Thank you.
All right, we've got everybody that's coming in, I suppose. And we need to call the roll for a quorum, please.
Okay. I believe by previous notice, our city clerk is not in today, so we'll call the roll. Alderman Cameron,
Here.
Alderman Quinn,
Here.
Alderman Morgan Adams,
Here.
Alderman Ludvixson.
Here.
Alderman Dolick.
Here.
We got your man?
Yeah, there they go. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So we have a quorum, 4 out of 5 aldermen being here. I would like to ask our first volunteer who spent his time in the service, as I did, and many others in this room, I think, and thank you for everybody that spent their time there. I'd like to ask the volunteer Rodney Adams to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Joe, let's move on with the approval of minutes.
Okay, we have up for consideration the October 28th minutes. Are there any additions or corrections? And if not, we will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
And all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Our first presentation tonight, Mr. Mayor, is from Lexington Homes. We have Mr. Nate Winsma and Tom Burney are representing Lexington Home. Just as background, as you and the council are aware, I think they're into their second year of working on this project. It's up at the former Jolly Funhouse Academy school up on the north side of town, 1001 Oak. And they have a proposal for a townhome development there. And they're also proposing the use of tax increment financing authority from the city. And at that, I'll let them make their presentation.
Please state your name, address, and why you're here.
Hi, Nate Weinsma with Lexington Homes. Is this loud enough or too loud?
You're good.
Okay. 1731 North Marcy Street, Chicago, Illinois. As Joe mentioned, we have been under contract to purchase the JFH Academy property for over a year now. I think we are in our second year. Hate to think of it that way, but I think it's true. We are proposing a townhome development. The process here started quite a while back. One of the primary hurdles to developing the property was a lack of water. So we went through a long, kind of drawn-out process of conversation with the adjoining community, Wheeling, about providing Lake Michigan water. Those discussions ended with a resounding no, which kind of led us to looking at every alternative to a feasible development of the property here whereby we could provide water to the community. The concept to develop the property hasn't changed all that much since we first started conversations with Prospect Heights. However, as part of that, those discussions, there is an easement on JFH property right now for access to Muir Park, and there's an existing a parking lot. So we had kind of simultaneously started a conversation with the Park District about that access easement and providing parking for the Park District as part of our overall development. Those conversations have evolved into the potential whereby we would maybe develop a portion of Muir Park and acquire a portion of Muir Park from the Park District. And we are pursuing those conversations. We've had, I think, 3 meetings now, maybe 4 meetings with the Park District to talk about their land and how we might jointly put the 2 properties together, which kind of leads us to our presentation tonight. We've kind of broken it into Scenario A and Scenario B. Scenario A is just the JFH Academy property. Scenario B includes a portion of the Park District property. Because those discussions are still ongoing, and we're trying to reach what we hope is an amicable agreement with the Park District. That plan is still evolving, but what we've got before you tonight are Scenario A and B, and the Scenario B, which includes the Park District, is basically the latest plan that was formally submitted to them. So with that, I'd like to jump into our PowerPoint here.
Excuse me one moment.
Sure.
Could you explain where this property is located?
Yes. Let me jump ahead to,
There's a lag.
yep. There we go. Oh, yeah, it is a lag. Okay, and there we go.
Where is that?
The property location is just east of 83 Elmhurst Road, just south of Drake Terrace. So you can see at the very bottom of the screen is Palatine Road, and we're just north and east of Palatine and 83, and north and east of where the ComEd power lines cross 83. The frontage along Route 83, Elmhurst Road, is apartments, existing apartments, and those apartments to the west of the project location are all within Wheeling. The single-family development to the south, all the way to the ComEd power lines, is also in Wheeling, and then to the east is Pleasant Run Park, and also some additional single-family development that's all within the village of Wheeling. So this project location shows the boundary of both JFH and Muir Park. Did everybody get a hard copy, or?
Yes.
Okay.
They're in the pack.
Okay, great.
And we have them here.
So I won't dwell on too much of the preliminaries here. Just Lexington Homes, for those who aren't familiar, in different iterations has been around for the principles of Lexington, and Lexington itself has been around for over 45 years. We've built over 40,000 homes throughout Chicagoland since 1974. The second sheet on Lexington kind of gives you a rundown from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, who we are, some examples of what we've done in Chicago. I believe the upper left corner says 1970s. That townhome picture there may be a townhome from Rob Roy. That was one of Lexington's early projects in Chicago. And they developed all of Rob Roy over the years, and I believe donated the remainder of the golf course to the village or to the Park District. I can't recall which. Rob Roy. So we have a long history, not only here in Prospect Heights, but in Chicago. These are just the members of our design team. This is the project location. This is at the top says Scenario A. This is a 61-unit concept plan. This is just on the JFH property. Detention is in the southeast corner. You'll note that along the west side, there's guest parking. That drive, that road that runs along the west property line would serve as the primary access to Muir Park, along with the parking there, would substitute the parking that currently exists in the parking lot at the south end of the JFH Academy property. We also were providing a few pedestrian access points to the park. There currently is a section of a good portion of the southern property line where the park district's asphalt bike path or walking path is actually, part of it is on our property. But the assumption of this design and plan was that that would just remain in place and we would tie into it with new pedestrian walks throughout the development. Scenario B is a little larger plan, 80 units total. This is the one that includes a portion of Muir Park. And what we had conceptually designed there was a replacement of a new ball field, new parking, some new green space improvements that would be a retained smaller park than what is there today. Through conversations with the Park District and their attorney, this plan will continue to evolve, and we think that we may be able to create a plan that has a swap of land or a reconstitution of land rather than a retained park that might be 2.5 acres instead of the current 4.5 acres. We're trying to come up with a plan design where the reconstituted Muir Park would also be 4.5 acres. So there are some IDNR standards and statutory requirements that we're working through with the Park District to try to make that happen. But the idea would be that there'd be a brand new, fully improved park that would be retained by the Park District. These, the next few pages are just examples of some of the architecture that we're proposing. This one happens to be a photograph of a building that we actually built. Same townhomes we're proposing here, we built in Park Ridge. So as part of this process and trying to figure out how to make this work for the Park District, for the city, create a water system and public infrastructure that could serve this development and beyond. We've hired Johnson Research Group, and Ralph Kinsner is here from Johnson to answer any specific questions or kind of drill down deeper if you have any questions for them. The TIF analysis we've done here also is broken into Scenario A and Scenario B. This is a summary of Scenario A, which is the 61-unit plan on just the JFH property. We are estimating a sellout retail value of $325 per unit, completed within about 2.5 years. Currently, the property taxes on the JFH property are zero. It's a tax-exempt property. So from a tax increment standpoint, we're starting from zero. So anything that would be developed or built on the property would create positive tax revenue. The estimated TIF revenue for the development would be $16 million total. Scenario B, the increase to 80 units, same price structure. It'd take probably 3 years to complete that project. Again, Muir Park, which would be added to this, is also tax exempt, so we're still starting with a current property tax basis of zero. Estimated TIF revenue of $20.8 million. This next sheet or slide summarizes the TIF eligible costs. That includes all the public infrastructure, soft costs, acquisition, demolition, site prep. Under scenario A, 61-unit plan, their total eligible costs of 5.1 roughly, and under scenario B, 6.5. At the bottom there, we just noted with the asterisk that the costs of this development are all to be paid upfront by the developer, and then reimbursed through the TIF over time. So what I would refer to it as is a pay-as-you-go TIF, which we would front all the costs for development, including soft costs. We've talked about setting up a drawdown deposit or some fund up front that would also pay for the city's costs, whether it's your attorney or your TIF consultant or an engineer. Those costs would all be paid by Lexington and become part of the TIF eligible costs. So essentially, what that describes is that there's no risk to the city if the TIF funds are insufficient. So if the sellout takes longer than estimated, or the tax increment that was estimated and agreed to by both consultants isn't as much as we thought that it would be, it would have an impact on Lexington and on our eligible cost reimbursement, but it would have no risk to the city. The next slide is just a broad summary of the allocation of TIF funds. Again, broken into the two scenarios. The estimated TIF revenue, which was summarized in the slides before, would either be 16 million or 21 million. The cost eligible for reimbursement would be 5.1 or 6.5. The school district reimbursement. So as we approached this, we wanted to, I think we were encouraged by staff to really look at this as how to structure this in a way that it was a win-win for the city without risk and without upfront cost. It would have to also be a win-win for the Park District, which part of the benefit to the Park District is that we would be acquiring their property. I'm happy to share those numbers with you that we've shared publicly with the Park District, but essentially the cost of the reconstituted, redeveloped park would be the cost of the development or Lexington. And then we would close on their property simultaneous to the closing on the JFH property. So we'd be paying the Park District upfront funds. The school district has a little bit different legal structure, whereby under a TIF, within a tax increment finance district, there is a statutory requirement for a carve-out to pay the school district annually. So the school district reimbursement is what's summarized there over the life of the TIF, and that's 2.3 to 2.9 million. And then the net available TIF funds would range anywhere from 8.5 to 11.5 million. The asterisk at the bottom again just summarizes that the city can use for other public improvements within the TIF boundary or expanded TIF boundary, or declare a surplus to distribute to taxing districts. One of the things that we didn't really envision in anything we're presenting tonight, but it's certainly something to discuss with the city, would be the actual boundary of the TIF that's ultimately created. That if it were to expand and include property beyond just the subject development, then any increment generated from this development could be utilized within the boundaries of that TIF or other capital infrastructure. The next piece of this that we looked at as trying to be a net positive for the city, 2 sheets down, is water distribution. So as I said at the beginning, part of the challenge here was creating potable domestic water for the development, which requires a well system. And this is similar to other systems that exist in Prospect Heights now that are either owned or managed by companies like Aqua Illinois or Illinois American. This would be a similar potable water system. Under scenario A, the consultant who we've hired to ultimately design this gave us some preliminary structure around what would have to be built here. The deep wells, the treatment facility, the pumps, the electronics that go into a system like this. If you look at those plans that we showed earlier, you'll see a pump house located on the site. The plan here would be to build that system up front and hand it over to Prospect Heights as a completed water system. The notes at the bottom of this table show an average water bill assumed based upon your current rates in Prospect Heights. The number of users, which is why the revenue changes, whether it's 61 or 80, is based on those rates times 12 months. And then there's an operating and maintenance cost that varies depending on the number of units, assuming the equipment would change slightly depending upon the number of units. This was developed by Lintech, who is a large water engineering company. This is really their specialty, is systems like this. They actually maintain under contract many of these systems with other municipalities. So I believe their numbers are pretty accurate because they operate systems like this and they know what the operating costs are. So the net operating income to the far right is just the difference between the revenue and the estimated cost. So what we wanted to do is create a system that would be turnkey, complete, at the time that it's turned over to Prospect Heights, and revenue positive. The revenue from this water system would be treated, I think, differently than the revenue from the TIF district, in that this revenue could be utilized, any excess revenue here could be utilized for, I think, whatever the city would want to use it for. The other design parameters that we kind of handed Lintech up front was we want a system that can be expanded upon. So if it's built to whatever IEPA requires, and I'm sure if you're going to build 80 townhomes, they require a system that has 110% or 120% capacity over and above whatever is going to be built, just as a safety factor. But we want a system that can be expanded upon, that could be doubled or tripled in size. So if it's treating or serving 80 homes today, it could serve, at least 200 to 300 homes in the future. With that, I'm happy to go back to any of the other slides and answer specific questions you might have. And then I can turn it over to Tom Burney to talk about what it is that we need to do here going forward. Yes.
The Park District that you were mentioning, was that Wheeling or was that
I'm
Prospect?
sorry. who
Oh, I'm
is it?
sorry, Mayor.
Who is
Cameron.
it down there?
Cameron.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sorry about that. Is that Wheeling or is that Prospect Heights?
Prospect Heights,
Prospect, okay,
yes. So we've been talking to them about Muir Park.
okay.
We've been talking about the current configuration of Muir Park, the current utilization of Muir Park. The plan that we had shown you earlier, the 80-unit plan, you'll note has the baseball field, which is actually I think a softball field right now that's in the northwest corner of Muir Park, just south of JFH. Would be redeveloped with a new baseball field, at least in this plan, in the southeast corner. They met with the Baseball Association. I think there was some, in our last meeting with the Park District, there was some discussion of when that field is really utilized for occasional practices, some makeup games. So part of the evolution of our discussions with the Park District is what would be in a reconstituted, redeveloped new park, what would be the highest level of utilization for something there. So we're actually looking at alternatives whereby there might be a multi-purpose field on the south end of Muir Park that could serve as, it would be a regulation-sized football field. It could also serve for soccer, lacrosse. They're looking in the future saying what sports are, lacrosse is kind of an up-and-coming sport. Would you be able to utilize it for something like that? So we're looking at, as far as just the improvements to the park, what makes the most sense for the Park District.
Okay. And then you mentioned about the path, the bike path. I know the bike path goes all the way from Euclid and Wolf Road, and that goes all the way up to Lake Arlington, but you said that was part your property too. Were you going to take that away? Because people usually ride their bikes, up and down that bike.
Yeah, no, whatever, the point there was there's a portion of their path that is on the JFH property, so we're incorporating that into our plan. In some cases where we've got adjoining properties where we have an encroachment, sometimes it's fences, play sets, things like that. We have to have them move their improvements back to the property line. In this case, we're trying to just integrate the park into our plan and keep everything where it is with regard to the path connections.
Okay, and then one last question. You mentioned Wheeling said no about, the Lake Michigan water. How close is your property to, to that? That's why you have to use well water versus Lake Michigan water. And was there a reason why they denied it, or?
I think there's a long history of reasons why, but there is adjoining water surrounding the property. I mean, to the east, to the south, to the west. The closest water main is probably near the proposed ball field in the southeast corner there, as far as to the property line. But there was, I guess I would put it this way, there was no political will to provide water outside of the municipal boundaries of Wheeling.
Alderman Morgan?
So I just wanted to point of clarification, just two things. One is, the park, Muir Park, is one of several parks that we have in Prospect Heights. It's very underutilized, mostly used by Wheeling residents. Very few Prospect Heights residents use it at all. And it's my understanding that, and again, going into the issue regarding Wheeling doesn't utilize all their water system. They only utilize about 65%, so they just don't want to do it because they want us to agree to de-annex the property, which I would not be in favor of. So, I mean, they just don't want to do it.
That was part of our discussion.
Right.
Yes.
So it's my understanding that you, in your proposal, you're agreeing to give a drawdown to Prospect Heights for even the initial phases of this, which would be having our consultants work with your consultants and getting involved with issues involving an inducement resolution to start the TIF and all of those types of issues, correct?
Yes. We expect or estimate that the cost, the soft cost to all of this could be upwards of $150,000 to basically set it all in place. And that doesn't include our civil engineering and surveying and all that, but just the TIF portion of it primarily. And we would agree to front fund all those costs.
So there'd be no risk to the city. The city's not putting out any money up front. Actually, the developer, like Lexington, would be fronting all the costs, but then, of course, asking for reimbursement through the TIF.
Through the TIF, yes.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Alderman Quinn?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Going down the road, Alderman Ludwigson?
Yes, I have a bunch. To start out with, the history of this park was that it was jointly built a long time ago, back when I was on the park board, using a grant. Both Wheeling and Prospect Heights coordinated the development of this to put a ball field on both sides. You know, where the park playground was gonna go was decided to be on their side, and so there was a lot of coordination to this park. I know it looks like it's, one is ours and one is theirs, but it was really contiguous.
Okay.
As far as the use of it, unless something changed, I've spent, I'm sure Mark has too, countless hours at that ball field with my daughters who played softball. And unless that, I know softball's going like crazy over here at this end. I'm not going to speak for the park district, but at the Kent McDonald Park, I mean, there's always games going on. I'm not sure if they don't use it anymore. I don't know if that's the case. Do you know? Is it not used?
I wasn't part of the meeting, but what was communicated to us was that it's utilized for primarily occasional practices and/or makeup games.
Okay.
So I would assume it's when a field is already booked for a game and this is a rain day makeup or something. But I think the reason I kind of stated that or pointed that out was we've had a couple of different scenarios that include a baseball field, a bigger baseball field than what's there now. And I get the sense, and again, this is kind of evolving and will ultimately be the decision of the park district, whatever they want to see improved there. But I get the sense that maybe a baseball field isn't what they think would be most highly utilized there.
Okay. And if you go to the, what I call the half plan, scenario A,
Yes.
you would be, because you can do it, because it would be your property, you'd be eliminating their parking, correct, for that ball field? So you
Yeah.
basically landlock the park district's park.
No, we would provide, so right now, unfortunately, I don't think your LED screen reflects the dot, but what you would be seeing in building 7, 8, 9 at the south end of the plan there. Today, there is I believe it's a 40-foot easement that runs down the west property line. That easement is to the benefit of the park district. It was formed a long time ago. Well, that's interesting. Oh, I just flashed back. So that easement agreement, there's a physical easement on the west side. The easement agreement calls out the rights to the park district for access. The paved drive that's there today doesn't go all the way to the park or the property line. It turns east and goes into a 26-car parking lot.
Right, basically the last unit, south unit of 9, 8, and 7.
Yeah, right in there.
That's where the parking
Yep,
lot is.
yep. So what we've talked about is the easement agreement requires that we maintain access to Muir Park and we provide parking adequate for Muir Park. So essentially, those first 26 parking spaces you see kind of back to back with the apartment parking along that west side, that would all be parking for the park district to make up for what's being eliminated in the.
I mean, if the baseball use went away, that would probably work, maybe, I don't know. There's a football field to the south of Muir Park. When you look at your larger plan where you show the baseball field going, if you were to do the whole thing, it's actually a football field, it's got a scoreboard and that. And I know that when that baseball field's in use, that entire parking lot that would be going away fills up completely. People park all the way on this Oak Avenue and that access road, all the way up to Drake Terrace.
Yeah.
On both sides of the road. I mean,
Yeah.
There's got to be 50, 60 cars, probably more than that, to park along there. I think that's being missed in this as far as required parking, because there was never enough parking there with the 26. It wasn't even close.
Okay.
So my concern would be too, is if you do this and you build that baseball field, it's gonna be new. Park district is, everybody's gonna wanna use it because it's new, which means it's gonna be put in a rotation, and the 26 spots you have won't even be close to what's needed for that, parking wise. People also used to park over across at Pleasant Run, parking
Yeah.
on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So I think your parking is way, 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 way off, because I know you're counting some of that shared parking as gas parking, and you're counting garage space and everything else, so,
Yeah, I think what was kind of described to us, and I've never been out there when the park was in use, but that, that current drive that comes in Oak Avenue all the way down, that there's parking, people park in the parking lot, and then they park along that drive all the way up. So what, you know, what I would presume here would be that the width of the roads would all be wide enough to accommodate parking on one side. And on game days or on days when the park was in high use, we'd see the same thing you see today, is people would be parking all the way out to Drake Terrace, along Oak Avenue and down that west side throughout the townhome development, which is why on that 61-unit plan, we provided 3 different sidewalk entrances into the park, because if somebody parks up by buildings 5, 6, or 3 and 4, or all the way out to Oak, they want to walk down, they may walk down the sidewalk into the park and not through the drive that would stub to the park. So I think that's part of living in a community where you've got a park, whether it's a single-family community or townhomes. When the park's in use and there's ball games going on, people park up and down the streets, and, you know, you hope they don't block driveways and hydrants and all those things that they're not supposed to do, but I think anyone living here would have to, you know, recognize that we're in a park community, that certain days of the year, it might be cars parked everywhere. And typically, they're gonna be Saturdays or Sundays.
okay. Are these gonna be HOA streets and parking, or is it gonna be city?
All HOA.
So only within the boundary of the property line in red?
I
don't know
would,
if that Oak Avenue is actually
Yeah.
dedicated.
I would expect that Oak Avenue all the way to Drake would be HOA.
Okay. And you're familiar with the traffic pattern for that? How when you leave, you have to turn right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Because I think once people in this neighborhood realize that you're gonna be dragging 160 units, let's say 260 people, I mean, I'm just going by the cars here that you list as far as, you know, on the development size, you show 234 cars. That's not even on a Saturday if there's a game going on, where you're gonna add another 50. So I'm not sure if they realize how much traffic's gonna be going through there. It's
Well,
a
that's
lot of
the
traffic.
total parking provided, but, yeah,
Right.
these will all be 2-car garage.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, even if it's just 2 cars a home and no guests, you know, you're talking 160
Yeah.
cars plus the use of the park.
Mhm.
Can they only turn right?
See where it says on Oak Avenue? Oh, yeah. You can only turn right on Drake. There's a right hand only. So you can come in off of 83 off of Drake Terrace and turn right onto Oak, but when you leave, you turn right onto Drake. And you kind of drive around the circle to get back to 83. So, you know, that's, I think engineering-wise, as far as parking and whatnot, it's, you probably have one too many units to be able to do that. It would be one too many whether you're doing the 60 or the 80, because that would be enough parking, and I know that that's a lot of units units as far as buildings, and that's a lot to get rid of, or that free space area between the units that you have,
Yeah.
where you have the walking paths. So that's the physical part of it that
Okay.
I wanted to bring up. Why, if this water system is gonna be cash flow positive, like you're saying, why wouldn't the HOA keep it?
Well, number one, I don't think it's ever a good idea for an HOA to own and operate a private water system. It's just not typically within their expertise. I've seen.
Well, they would hire somebody, they wouldn't do it themselves, I mean.
Right, but I think their expertise or their ability to manage a public infrastructure like this is Not something we ever like to,
Right, but I mean, there's the Illinois Americans and all the
Yep.
water operators that could operate.
yeah, I think the Illinois American just had to take over an HOA on the north, over by the airport this past year, because their system failed, and they had to come in and take it over. But,
Because I wouldn't have any interest in owning that water system. Because I don't think it's going to be as, first you're talking about a well, you're not talking about
Yeah.
guaranteed water through a system. You have a well that could run dry, and I mean, I know those wells are $500,000-$600,000. They're 750 feet deep, they're expensive, so it's not something that I would ever want to venture into. I don't think you can insure them either. When it runs, when something happens to it and it's over. Is it normal to use, because this is just like a big circle here with the TIF, is it normal to buy a public piece of property like that, using TIF money, and then going and paying off the loan with the TIF money that you borrowed in the first place?
well, Lexington right now is building in 3 communities that we are, hold on, let me make sure I'm stating this right. Yes, we're building in 3 communities now that all are under a TIF agreement, all 3 developments. 2 of them, we bought all of the land directly from the municipality. So it was all public land.
Was it park? What kind of land was it?
No, it was not park.
Was it old building or?
Some of it was older properties that, like in Oak Park, for instance, it was an older commercial property that we bought from the city. The property's highly contaminated, so we're remediating it. In Morton Grove, it was a combination of parcels, but it was a redevelopment of assemblage of different properties. But yeah, it's not atypical for us to do TIFs involving public land.
Right, but usually the land, if it's public, is pretty ugly. It's got contaminated soil, it's got an old building that's got to come out. It's not desirable, that's why you're TIFing it in the first place, right? I mean,
Well, it's not that it's not desirable. I mean, these are in very desirable areas with higher price points than what we would be selling townhomes for here, but difficult properties, difficult in that they don't have infrastructure in place, or that we're overdeveloping infrastructure that isn't there, or we're remediating environmental contamination. There's a whole host of different things that we typically deal with.
And it would be logical for this TIF boundary to be the property lines. To go beyond that, you're going to explode this TIF to a level as far as like the EAV would just. I mean, once you start including homes, which the only direction we can go to, the only way we could expand the TIF would be to go north.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't go any other direction. So even the excess money in this TIF either just has to be paid back to the districts or has to be spent within the boundaries of the TIF, which I can't imagine anybody would say that you'd grow this TIF bigger than what the property lines. Is that, do you agree with that?
That's completely up to the city,
'Cause
whether,
I mean, if we
where they want
take
the
that whole
boundary.
neighborhood to the north of it and put it in there, that TIF would, quadruple in size, correct?
Yeah.
I'm Tom Burney. I'd look at it as a sequence thing, that when all the expenses for this TIF are paid off, that the city could then look to expand the TIF to that other area so that it could use the surplus. That's how I'd see it
But that's
go.
not a guarantee, we have to apply for that, and there's no guarantee the state would let you expand it automatically, would they?
With a TIF study, just like what you're going through now, if you would go through this now, then you, in my opinion, you could go north, expanding the boundaries of the TIF. And I've seen other towns do that.
Or create a second TIF and port the money. That's another possibility.
Okay. Also, too, as far as the property tax, I know people look at this and say, well, TIF's great for you because you're going to take what I'm going to guess is probably $800,000 or $900,000 worth of a purchase for you in land and turn it into $15 million in a TIF lifetime of increment. So, and you're also gonna put in 60 units that are gonna have EAVs of $300,000 versus one that's got, you know, maybe 500 or 600, if that.
Right.
Right now.
Yeah.
So I get that, but you guys have to realize that we don't have, our property tax is about 5% of our tax bill right now. The only reason why is we have outstanding road bonds that were done through referendum. So we're not the same as another town that would see 10% of their property tax bill
Right.
going to their city. Once that road bond goes away, we're down to a police pension, which is about $350,000.
Yeah.
That's it,
Yeah.
nothing else. So the TIF doesn't help our city, it helps the school. So I think this might be one TIF where we go to the school and say, if you want us to do it, instead of it always being the city going to the school and saying, hey, here's what we'll do for you if you let us do this TIF. It's really the other way around, because the big winner on this TIF is the school, not the city, by far. So I don't want people to, because we're not gonna make any more tax money from this. I don't care if those units were $1 million apiece, the city of Prospect Heights would not see taxes from it. Is that, am I correct? Once that road bond is done, that's it. We're done.
Well, we have permit fees, we have all other kinds of fees, and
I'm
impossible
talking about
sales.
after year one, I'm talking about down the road.
Well, there might be other ways of getting revenue from there.
Like what?
Well, I mean, there could be,
Well,
I mean-
there's the life of the TIF, that all, the excess increment after the reimbursables and the school district carve-out would all be the city's for 20 years or whatever it
Only
amounts to.
TIF eligible expense.
Okay, but,
We just went through a really bad TIF. We're about to say goodbye to a horrific TIF.
But-
Okay? So
But what-
we've unfortunately got a PhD education in TIFs, if you've been on this council long enough, and you can't just spend it on whatever you want. It's within the boundaries of the TIF, so ultimately that extra money would go back to the taxing districts, which wouldn't be Prospect Heights. So I just don't want people to think that, you know, oh, if you say this is bad, if you don't want this thing, which God bless you to do what you want with your property, I just don't like the well coming to us, I don't like the TIF.
well, the well doesn't have to come to you.
No, I get that. but-
And I just wanted to clarify one thing. When we talked about the design of that initially, we went to Illinois American and Aqua and said, you know, what, number one, would this be a system that you would be willing to, under contract, take over and maintain? They said yes. And number two is if it's a revenue positive, and they, you know, we didn't negotiate numbers with them, but they would buy this system. So at some cap rate based on the net revenue, if the city doesn't want to own it, it's the city's to sell. And that revenue is positive to the city, and it's not tied up in the TIF, and that could be utilized for anything the city wanted.
I think your proposal should show you selling this thing after it's done and giving us that differential, because I'd rather do it that way than take.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that. Yeah.
If you want
I
to
guess
do
I'd just
that.
like you to test what it's like to be, for your residents to be under Illinois American.
Oh, we
law.
have 1/3 of
Yeah.
our city that is.
You know, and we've had real bad experiences, friends of mine who live in Crystal Lake or Prairie Grove, who have that and they can barely afford to take a shower.
Right.
Because there's no control, and so my sense was that with city control over it, you'd be protecting your residents.
Right, but not to tell you how to do it, but I'd rather see an SSA if you're gonna do anything, and create an SSA to manage that system, because if something goes wrong with that well, although it might be great the first few years, the entire city's responsible for it at that point. If we do an SSA, it will only be.
That's insightful.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to understand our reasoning that, just a concern about an HOA, because they've got a lot of things doing, maybe they're sitting on village boards, cities, councils, you know, can't be paying attention to the water, they don't know who to turn to.
Right.
But I guess starkly, and you make a good point about the real estate tax to the village, city, but I don't see how this ground can be developed if it doesn't have a water supply. And it seems like we're between a rock and a hard place with Wheeling. And so it seems like all that's left is, you're weighing the benefits between a nonprofit church or maybe another nonprofit school, or develop.
$700,000 homes.
He wants to buy one like that.
A home in there?
Yeah, I mean, what,
Between two apartment complexes, you know.
but you're gonna jam these $325,000 units between a apartment complex?
Right, but I think that's.
And those houses on the backside of that are
All right, so
Pretty nice.
it's a land, you have a land use issue with this as well.
well, I think yours is more of a higher and best use interest than it is land use, because there's no problem putting 5 or 6 homes on that property.
And what is that going to accomplish?
It's gonna stick with the, what Prospect Heights is about, single-family residence.
We have Rob Roy. It would be a very small version of Rob Roy. What is wrong with that? I mean, you
Nothing
seem to be
wrong.
against anything that is progress in this city.
It's your version of progress is, your version of progress.
No, yours is, there's no progress. You have no vision of progress at all.
Okay.
This land is not being used at all. It's been sitting around for several years. I mean, there's nothing going on. It's just vacant. It's just sitting there, doing nothing. So, and I mean, this is a project, you talk about parking. I mean, Rob Roy has parking, you know, the same issue with parking. They don't have any problems. I mean, you're just
That's not
creating-
true, Wendy. Since I live there, I can tell you your topic on parking in Rob Roy
Well, we don't-
is not
it's
true.
It's not the same thing. And this is actually.
Exactly.
It's not the same.
We
thing
don't
because
have a
you don't have a park, and this is not the same scale. And the park that exists is a small portion of this whole thing. So I really think that, you know, Pat, you're blowing it up out of proportion.
All right, let's hold it there and continue with your presentation.
One last thing
Please.
is, as far as your idea of going to Wheeling, I hate to say that, that's probably a good scenario for the water itself, but what you're suggesting isn't even close. So, I mean, if that was something you wanted to talk about, we could.
What do you mean by that? I don't know.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's a suggestion that we state that the property go to Wheeling, that we de-annex and go to Wheeling.
That's a really bad idea. I would not be in favor of that.
Thank you, thank you. We have a presenter here.
But
Any
just
more
like,
questions?
just like, one last, just like the Alderman was saying, there's front-end benefits to
Yeah.
this if we do it. The front-end benefit of that disconnection is huge. I mean, in my opinion, much, much, much huger than what you guys think it is or say it is. So if you wanted to talk about that, I'd be willing to talk about that, but there's no way that I could see doing a TIF, and there's no way that I could see, because if you didn't have to, if you could get the water, you wouldn't even be looking for a TIF, correct?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
Because your whole TIF money is being spent for infrastructure. So,
So we were reticent. We did come to the administrator about disconnection. And no town likes to disconnect. You know, you have the legal authority. We can't do it as a matter of right through a court proceeding because the ground is too small. But if you agree to disconnect us, we can do that. You know what? I think the relationship we built up with your staff, we prefer to proceed with this, but, and I don't know that there's a majority vote to disconnect, and that's what it's gonna take, confer with your village attorney.
I'd be willing to
Takes
talk.
three out of 5 votes.
I'd be willing to talk with you about that. There's a bunch of little aspects to it that might make it worthwhile. As far as I'm concerned, I can't speak for everybody else, but.
This city has given up, given up land they should never have given up 20 years ago, 25 years ago. We have no land to give up. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Absolutely ridiculous.
I just want to clarify, your point is, as far as benefits to disconnecting the property from Prospect Heights and annexing it to Wheeling, benefits for Prospect Heights, or what?
Yeah, I mean,
No benefit to Prospect Heights.
you're walking into this not, there's decades of history that I think we could talk about, and I think might be beneficial to everybody, if you're really looking to do this development, because, you know, all this multifamily you're putting in here is gonna go with the multifamily that's there, that's already Wheeling. Wheeling would probably let you make a connection to one of their neighborhoods there or something to get more access to this, but they won't do it if it's Prospect Heights. So there's a lot of, and you're gonna be adding all of this EAV to them, who will be getting that full value out of it. Would love to have a water system. It wouldn't even be a water system. It'd be a little spigot connection to their existing system. So there's a lot of upside to them, and there could be some upside for us, but I think we could talk
Yeah,
about it.
you know, we've been working on.
Would you mind coming to the podium?
What, sorry, so the manager said, we've been at this for over a year, and we're really just trying to get a consensus on trying to move forward. This was the best plan we could come up with, because we recognize there's a large sentiment in your community to keep the land that you have. I remember when you were first created, so back in 76 or so.
76.
Yeah,
If you want to wait till after or talk to me tomorrow,
yeah.
I'll go over what I'm talking about.
Well, we would like, if we could, possibly some clear direction on how we can go. We've got a very anxious seller. You may know her. She's come to a few meetings, and she's in kind of desperate straits. So we would like to try to solve this problem for her as well for us.
But it's not going to be de-annexation. It's not going to happen.
know,
So, I mean, you can.
This is the classic rock and a hard.
I'd be happy to talk to you as well. This is
Yeah.
my ward, not
Yeah.
his ward.
No.
And
Alderman-
we've given up property in
Alderman
Rainhurst,
Wendy.
Target, the
Jeez.
dealership. We're not giving up any
You've
more
been
property.
very-
That's the most ridiculous thing I've heard.
Alderman, you've been very kind.
You've
with
said
your
that
time.
4 times.
I've only not
Thank you.
said it 4 times.
You have said it 4
So,
times. Thank you.
That's
Let's
all my
move on.
questions.
The ask we have, and there may be somebody else with questions, but just so I could get this in, is that we would ask for a vote on adopting directing staff and your attorney to prepare an inducement resolution. And the inducement resolution is not, it would clearly state it's not binding on you creating a TIF at the end of the day, but it then allows all of these expenses that were kind of laid out on that diagram to be reimbursable if you do establish the TIF. And it's a fairly standard method. I also think that kind of given the lack of a consensus on the board, we need to know whether or not there is a majority support for moving forward with the TIF. We've been spinning our wheels for a long time, and you know how hard it is so many times to get a decision from anybody. It's just kind of like the coal miner's daughter. So we would like to ask you to put a motion on the floor about an inducement resolution so we could catch the temperature of the council on this.
Let me say that we're not prepared to make a motion tonight. We were prepared to listen to the presentation, and there's some discussion to be had with either individual aldermen, but no more than 2 at the same time. And I think maybe by the next meeting, we'd be at a point where we could say, let's go or let's not.
Okay, Mayor.
And that's a committee decision, a council decision.
You understand, we are not asking you to adopt an inducement resolution. We're simply asking you out of a workshop to direct the manager and the attorney to draft one for you to consider at a regularly scheduled village board meeting. That's where we know you can't act tonight.
Right. All right, where are we? Are we going farther, or are we done?
Any other questions?
Thank you. Alderman Dolick.
I have no further questions, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Maybe if we could have a little bit of direction for staff? Do you want to have this prepared for this next meeting?
We've got
Have
2
a
people
question.
that are
Tina makes a good-
requesting.
that would be a great idea.
One at a time, please. We have a request from 2 people that would like to meet with the developer and present some of their thoughts, which may be right, may be wrong. But until then, I'm not prepared to do that. You have something
We have a guest who has a question for
on this
Lexington.
issue?
Yes,
Sure.
I think it would be appropriate.
Is
to
this
do it
the
this-
appropriate time?
I think so, yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
His
sir.
Just a quick
name
comment.
is-
I'd be willing to meet with Alderman Adams on this if she wants to meet after this meeting. Like I always tell you, my famous line, I'll stay here until midnight. So
And you
if
2
you're willing
are
to stay,
welcome. You're
Well, maybe
welcome
you
to
are.
stay.
and
I
we'll-
can't meet tonight after the meeting, but I'd be happy to meet
but
with
you
you at
should-
another time.
You should ask the alderman if he'll meet you at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Sure.
Anyway.
Saturday at 3, we're on. Can you be here?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's see what you got there. All right, thank you, I believe.
Was there any questions you wanted me to answer from?
Well, take a seat and I can
Okay.
call you back.
All right.
We have Ralph Kinzer, IRG Incorporated, a company apparently.
I was just part of I'm the
Oh, we-
consultant that was.
He's our consultant.
Okay, is there anything you want to add? 2 minutes?
Only if anybody had any questions, further questions about the TIF.
All right, you may
I
be-
would only add that his question about, concerns about the water system would, of course, be
All right.
something you could fund with the.
You may be seated, thank you. All right, have we done that, Joe? Do you feel good about not doing anything?
It's what we do best.
All right. All right, why are we standing up down there? Did you want to make a comment?
No, sir.
Oh, you're doing the PowerPoint, thank you. Joe, go ahead.
The next presentation is the Airport Layout Master Plan by Chicago Executive Airport. George?
George is here, isn't he? George fell asleep.
Oh, okay.
George, we'll miss you. We were told you would entertain us, right?
Good evening, everybody. Does everybody have a copy of the slides? I think they were in the
All right.
packet. Okay, because I have other copies here if you need them.
You can identify yourself.
Oh, thank you. My name is Craig Loudon. I work for Crawford, Murphy, and Tilly. We're located at 550 North Commons Drive, Suite 116 in Aurora, Illinois, 60504.
All right, thank you.
So I'm here to give the council a very short briefing on our progress on the airport layout plan, which is an element of Chicago Executive Airport's master plan that's been ongoing for a couple of years now. So you'll have to bear with me. I'm going to probably screw this up, so just hang on a sec. All right, okay. So the first place I want to start is with the project status. As I mentioned before, we've been working on this project for a few years on behalf of the airport, and the good news is we're just about wrapped up. The first bullet point up there is states that the preferred development concept has been selected. Essentially, that is what is going to be shown in the airport master plan has been determined by airport staff. And we are essentially moving forward with all of those work items that you see at the bottom of the screen. FAA has a large number of required documents and deliverables that they require to be completed as part of a master plan, and we are working on developing those documents as well. The other thing I should note is that our public involvement process has been completed. I believe a number of you have been to some of the public meetings over the last couple of years and have witnessed that process ongoing, but we are done with that and are moving to sort of the deliverable report generation portion of the project. So the one that I want to talk about now is the second, in that second list is the airport layout plan. The intergovernmental agreement that has been executed to sort of run the airport between the city of Prospect Heights and the village of Wheeling states that each community has to approve the airport layout plan prior to its adoption. So what we're here to do tonight is to just kind of brief you on where we're at. And then I also have a couple of foam board airport layout plan documents that I'm planning to leave here tonight. We're not going to ask for a formal vote or anything like that on the airport layout plan tonight, but we just wanted to kind of brief you on the project and provide some of the deliverables and the actual airport layout plan itself for your review over the next couple of months, and then we'll be back in a couple of months to ask for the formal vote that's required by the intergovernmental agreement. I also have some 11 by 17s of the airport layout plan that I can leave here as well for your review. So some highlights on the development that's being shown at the airport. I think the first one is really important. All of the development is being contained within what we call the roadway boundaries of the airport. So on the north side, it's Hintz Road. On the west side, it's Wolf Road. The east side, it's Milwaukee Avenue. And the south side, it's the main line of Palatine Road. That was part of the direction that the communities gave to the airport maybe eight or 9 months ago, and we've complied with that direction. There have been no changes from the development that was shown over the summer at the open house that we had at the Ramada Inn, and that was also presented earlier this fall at the joint meeting with the city and the village at the joint meeting. So a couple of other key items. Runway 624 is proposed to be closed. That is the smallest of the 3 runways at the airport. It runs basically east-west, and it is by far the least used runway at the airport, and so the airport is planning to shut that down permanently, which will reduce them from a 3-runway airport down to a 2-runway airport. And then lastly, we have a total of the hangar development that's being shown at the airport. If you guys recall from the public open house and the joint meeting, one of the key things that we're looking at as part of the airport master plan is the development of hangar buildings to accommodate the growth in aviation that we're forecasting to happen over the next 20 years at the airport. So you can see that we're projecting almost 1 million square foot of hangar buildings will be developed over a 20-year horizon. Just about half of that square footage is in Prospect Heights. A little tiny bit more than half is in Wheeling. Similarly, on the total development, that's the aircraft parking apron, the automobile parking, the stormwater management, et cetera. In addition to the hangar building itself, about 2 million total square feet is being developed, and again, just a little under half of that is called for in Prospect Heights versus in Wheeling. And then, as I mentioned, we're reserving significant space for stormwater management improvements. Understanding the airport's location right next to the Des Plaines River, MWRD is going to really kind of make sure that we're reserving quite a bit of space to maintain stormwater management. So the next slide is a copy of the existing airport layout plan. The way FAA requires this is they require 2 specific sheets, an existing condition and a future condition. So this is called the existing airport layout drawing, and it's a depiction of what is at the airport today. So I don't think it should come as any surprise to anyone, and I have, as I mentioned, a copy on a foam board that's printed out at 32 by 40 that I will leave for the council's review at a later date. And then the next slide is the future airport layout plan drawing. This is, again, a depiction of what we're projecting over the next 20 years of development. You'll see that, as I mentioned before, all of the development is located inside of those 4 roadways that bound the airport. So again, no changes from the previous information that we have released. But again, and this is on a copy of the phone board, and I'll also leave some 11 by 17s for your review. So lastly, I'll wrap up with some next steps. As I mentioned, there are a couple of action items for the city. The first one is we would request your review of the airport layout plan sheets, and then we would ask for a formal ALP approval resolution shortly after the new year. The intent with that timing is that is about the time when we will be submitting the airport layout plan in its entirety to the State of Illinois Department of Transportation, Division of Aeronautics, and the FAA for their review and approval. So we would ask for your approval around that same time as the submittal. And then we will be wrapping up the entire project in early 2020 with the master plan report that will be delivered to the airport. So again, I wanted to keep it brief and just kind of update you on where we've been and kind of where we are now, and then just ask that you know, you be prepared for that approval resolution in a few months. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions you have about the project or the airport layout.
Questions, Alderman Golick?
Just down the road, there has been some talk about trying to widen 1230. Would that be in the next few years, or is that part of this plan, or is that longer into the future?
No, it is shown on the plan. The timing of that project is up in the air a little bit. We're currently working with FAA to justify that project for funding. So it is, we understand it's very high on the airport's priority list. One of the items that we have to do as part of the master plan yet is what's called a capital improvement program, essentially where we take some of the projects that we're proposing and kind of slot them into a logical sequence for funding. And that project is very high on the airport's list, and we anticipate that project moving forward in what we describe as the short-term horizon, which is essentially the 0 to 5 year window of the master plan. So yes, it is very high on the airport's priority list.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Alderman Ludwigson?
Can you go to that slide where you showed the boundaries?
Absolutely.
The second boundary. My question is, you were saying how the property or the mandate is to work within the street boundaries. The stuff that's north of Hints there is mostly just no builds. Do you own that property?
Yes, so that property was acquired probably 25, 30 years ago during the realignment of Wolf and Hints Roads. Back in the mid-90s, you can see how Hints Road kind of bends around the runway end there, and Wolf does the same thing. So that property was all acquired to facilitate the relocation of the roads, I think in 94 and 95.
Right.
So all of that is directly inside the approach to runway, to the north end of that runway. So it is unbuildable and will remain open land into the future.
Because there is a road between Palatine Road and the airport that I think those yellow buildings on the far, what would be the far top right section, the yellow buildings go on an angle, that's currently outside the airport.
Correct. So the point of clarification there is all of the development is staying north of what we describe as mainline Palatine Road. The road that you're referring to is the Palatine Frontage Road that connects Milwaukee Avenue to Palatine Road there. And so the planning that went into that is consistent with the 2009 airport layout plan, which was approved by Wheeling and Prospect Heights and showed that road, the Palatine Frontage Road, being relocated to accommodate some additional development at the airport. And so we've maintained that road relocation as part of this. But Palatine Road, the main line, the 4-lane section, remains as is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Alderman Quinn?
I don't have any questions.
Alderman Wendy?
I don't have any questions right now.
And Alderman
Cameron.
Cameron. I'm trying to recognize the voice of the name. Alderman Cameron.
Thank you. Okay, so you said that you're going to come back to us in a couple months to approve, and then you said you send it to the state, and then it'll go to the airport. How long does it usually take for, after we approve it, to send it to the state, and how long do they take before you guys actually get it back?
Unfortunately, they take a long time. We're dealing with an arm of IDOT and an arm of the federal government in FAA. So it could very easily take 6 months for review and approval, and 9 months is not out of the question. So CMT has completed a number of these planning projects at airports around the Midwest, and unfortunately, that 6 to 9 month time frame is what we see pretty consistently throughout the Midwest, dealing with the same staff members at FAA that we will be dealing with on this project.
Okay, and then you were saying that land that you got from, is it Wolf and Hints Road? I think it used to be Echo Products or whatever. Is that, you own that, all that land right before there's like a little pond? Is that where this is at?
I'm not exactly familiar with the business name you're referring to, but I believe that, I think that's what we're talking about. Is you can see kind of on the lower left-hand side of that graphic, there's I guess a couple of triangular pieces, one north of Hints Road and one kind of west of Wolf Road. Those are the two that I believe that the airport owns, that were acquired as part of the Wolf and Hints relocation 25 years ago, and those are the ones that are going to stay open space as they are today.
Okay.
Does that end?
Yeah, well, I was just wondering if you were going to have one on the east side, as like, precaution, like, because, I was part of when one of the planes crashed, I was like right there, so I definitely, was thankful, but I was just wondering if you had any thing, on.
No, it's not in the plans to acquire any additional land outside of those four roadway boundaries.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Chief, anything regarding the police department?
No.
All right, good. I think we've got it all.
Okay. So I will leave the two white boards over there for the city's use, and then I also have a stack of 11 by 17 drawings of the two airport layout plan sheets that I can also leave.
Could you send those to Joe in PDF?
Absolutely. I think they may have them in the AV room as well. We sent those as well. If you don't have them, by all means, let me know, and we'll get them to you. That's not a problem, but I believe you already have them. So, thank you guys very much.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Joe, can we move on?
The next item is the annual audit presentation by Eder Casella and Company, and Rachel Lesperance will present tonight.
Rachel, good evening.
My name is Rachel Lesperance. I'm from Eder Casella at 5400 West Elm Street in McHenry. So today I'm just going to do a quick brief overview of the audit for you and then open it up for questions afterwards. So the first section is just introductory, but if you turn to page 1, probably actually the 10th page or so, this is the auditor's opinion letter. And basically, the goal of an audit is to determine whether or not your financial statements are fairly presented, not materially misstated. And we issued an unqualified opinion, so that means you passed. There was nothing wrong that we found that was materially misstated. We had no reason to disclaim an opinion. And we also did not issue a management letter, so that means nothing other than a financial issue came to our attention during the audit, like a significant deficiency in internal controls or something of that sort. So nothing to issue a management letter. If you continue to page 3, you'll see the management's discussion and analysis. If you're going to read any of this 120-something pages, this is the part to read. It's a narrative of the financial statements, and it summarizes significant transactions throughout the year, your significant account balances. So if you're not going to read anything, you could definitely read this. And then if you get to page 15, this is where your financial statements start. So as a governmental entity, you have 2 sets of financial statements. And this first set is your government-wide statements. So it includes all of your non-current assets, non-current liabilities that aren't necessarily included in the fund financials, so things like capital assets, pension liabilities, it's all encompassing. So you'll see there's a column for governmental activities, a column for business type, and you can see at the bottom the total net position. Basically, your total equity at April 30th, 2019 was $80 million. The next page, page 16, is basically your government-wide income statement, and this is presented on a by-function basis. So you have your expenses split out by function, and then your revenues related to those functions to get to your net income by function, such as general government, public safety, public works, and so on. At the bottom, you have your general revenues, which are not allocable to a specific function, such as property taxes, sales taxes, and so on. And you can see that your net position, your total equity for the year, increased $2.2 million, which was 2.78% from the prior year. The next set of financials, these are your fund financial statements. So this might be what you're more familiar with seeing on a regular basis. The balance sheet on page 17 gives your total governmental fund balance of $24 million. I apologize, $21.2 million. The general fund had a total fund balance at April 30th of $11 million, and of that $11 million, 5.2 was unassigned. So you're allowed to, management is allowed to use 5.2 million for whatever they deem necessary. Another way to look at that is how many months could the general fund survive if they didn't take in another dollar of income, and you're at 7.6 months. Healthy is 6 months to 12 months, so you're in a good spot. If you go to page 19, this is the income statement for your governmental funds. You can see that your total net change in the governmental fund balance was 1.1 million for the year. And then we come to your business type activities. Yes?
I'm not finding, Mayor, I'm not finding these pages I'm sorry.
Ours are numbered completely different.
Yeah, these, I have different numbers. I don't know where you're at. I'm sorry.
Can I,
I just want to make sure I'm on the same page, because,
I have some actual hard copies, if bound copies that I could give you. Oh, still do you?
But they're just not numbered, the
What page
numbers.
are you on in your report?
Well, maybe the bound copy.
I'm on pages 21 and 22. It
we
says,
start, page
In the-
70.
70.
We start at 70.
So it's page 111 and 112, I think.
thank you. I'm very sorry for that.
We have a PDF that's numbered from first to end, and yours is in the middle.
Gotcha.
So when you're saying page number, only part of your report has page numbers.
Huh, okay. So the statement I'm looking at right now says Statement of Net Position, Proprietary Funds. Does anyone see that? Yes?
No, I do, I'm sorry, I don't see it. Is it on page 111?
112.
112? Okay, we're at
112.
112 now, okay.
Okay, so this is your balance sheet and income statement for your enterprise funds, water, sewer, and parking. The total net position at the end of the year was 6.4 million, which was an increase of 729,000 from the prior year. The next set of statements is, we have your balance sheet and income statement for the pension fund. It has a $17.3 million balance, which was an increase of 1.2 million from 2018. So those are your basic financial statements. Following those, we have the footnotes to the financial statements, and these are basically more detail to the items that you find in the financial statements, your significant accounting policies. So if there's something that you see in the financials that you want more information on, if it's a significant item, you'll find more information in the footnotes. Following the footnotes, we just have supplemental information, budget to actual, combining statements, debt schedules, and so on. Are there any questions? I just want to say thank you to the finance department staff. They were very easy to work with and helpful and prompt and to our requests for lots of information. So thank you, and it's been a pleasure working with them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next, all right. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the Cannabis Committee update. As you and the council are aware, the Cannabis Committee has met roughly about the last month on a regular basis, weekly basis. Tonight is a presentation from Chairman Tom Heitink, and also I'd like to recognize two committee members also in the audience, Sharon Hoffman and Sandy Stricker. The ordinance, John will explain that there was a time element, so I don't think council really had the opportunity to hear the committee's report and recommendation, and maybe it's what's as important is how they evaluated these things, because I went to their meetings. I know you spent considerable time trying to weigh issues, so tonight's an opportunity for the committee to make their findings to the council.
Good evening.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for those kind words. And again, I do have to give a shout out to Sharon and Sandy. We just had a great committee, a lot of good interchange amongst the members, a lot of passion around this topic. And if they'd like, they could certainly make a statement, but let me just give some brief overview comments. I would like to have, they're both registered nurses and they feel very passionate about this topic. Again, good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Last time we spoke, the committee had unanimously recommended that we consider and move forward with the dispensal of adult use cannabis in the town. And at that time, we said we still needed, we felt there needed to be some additional restrictions, as well as guidance in terms of how we want to go about potentially allowing this in our community. One of the topics that we had discussed as to whether or not we should open up our committee to a town hall type of session. We elected to not move forward with that because we didn't believe we had enough time to be able to come to conclusions. We also felt that there would be ample opportunity for the community to provide input both at the zoning committee sessions on this topic and ultimately when this topic comes up to the committee for eventual approval. So we did not do that. We did, of course, rely on the informal town survey that we had mentioned last time, as well as the results of the non-binding referendum before the state legislature approved the non-cannabis. Let me just go through a few topics, first of all, and talk about retail dispensaries, first of all. Again, the committee was in favor of allowing retail dispensaries in our town. We think there's some restrictions that we need to be put on that. Let me take you through some of those. Again, all of the recommendations that we're making were unanimously approved by committee members. But with respect to whether or not we should have a cap on the number of dispensaries, we concluded no cap is necessary. But with the restrictions that we're going to talk about, it's self-limiting in its own right, in that, first and foremost, we wanted to limit the potential dispensaries to special use permits in our commercial districts, in all the districts other than B1. We just didn't think a dispensary would be compatible to the surrounding areas for the B1, but we felt it was okay for these dispensaries to be located in B2, B2A, B3, B4 PUD. I've got a little bit of a lesson that I received on commercial districts from some of the community members, so that was good. But we also felt that there were some setback requirements that needed to be considered as well. And the first and foremost, and Ms. Alderman Loverson had expressed some concerns with respect to locating these dispensaries close to the schools in town. And so we debated that and concluded the same, that we did need to have a setback. And we sort of circled around a 750 square foot setback as something that we felt was appropriate, but at the same time not overly restrictive such that it would grossly, exaggeratedly limit the locations in which these stores could be located. But we didn't specify any setbacks for parks, churches, daycare centers, or residential housing as part of that concept. We just didn't feel that was necessary. Because Prospect Heights has two primary traffic thoroughfares that would accommodate the commercial space that we would think would be acceptable for the cannabis, as well as the fact that the state in of itself has certain restrictions with respect to how far dispensaries needed to be away from each other. The limitations that would be self-imposed by virtue of these restrictions would largely restrict the number of facilities to probably 2 retail locations, as well as one other cannabis location I'm going to get to in a second. So the maximum that the town could potentially accommodate would be 3. Again, we're not specifying any limits because we don't want to be limited, but from a practical perspective, the maximum amount that the town would be able to accommodate would be 3 in any event. We didn't think it was necessary to specify it. We felt leave that open and see how the market determines and whether or not we get any interested commercial enterprises to locate their locations here. Regarding non-residential cannabis facilities, those are, I'm going to have to read them out because I can't remember them, cultivation centers, craft growers, processing organizations, and infusers. They all have specific identification. But think about those companies, in my mind, as the commercial aspects of cannabis, as opposed to retail sales. So this would just be manufacturing, processing, growing. Again, we thought it would be okay, probably less controversial to have that kind of business in our town, but we would like to limit the location of those into the B3, B4 zoning districts, primarily in the city's industrial manufacturing location. So thinking about it, if in fact we do have a commercial enterprise located in that area, then we could only maximum have 2 potential retail locations. So if it's 1 commercial, 2 retail, is sort of the way the math works. Regarding social lounges, again, this is, a social lounge is the concept where you would be able to consume the product on site. This one caused some debate within our practice, within our group. But, you know, as we talked about it collectively, and the fact that we'd want to avoid having people consuming cannabis in public areas in our town. There's probably also going to be restrictions in the hotels from smoking. That if in fact we were going to allow cannabis in our town, and I think we decided because there's tremendous potential financial benefits, again, don't want to overstate it, but there is financial benefits, that it may make sense, and probably does make sense, to allow on-site consumption. Because you don't want to have them doing it in public spaces. You don't want to have them doing it in hotel rooms. And you really don't want to have people consuming this stuff around minors, that it probably made sense to have it consumed on-site. And it's for those reasons that we felt it would probably make sense to also allow on-site consumption. Again, we're not going to try to restrict it to any one of the business corridors. We think the market will decide that. But if you think about the hotel district, for instance, out-of-town residents coming in, someone likes to decide they want to use cannabis. They're probably not going to be able to go back to their hotel room to use it. So it certainly made sense. It was practical to us that they would be able to consume it, enjoy it at a lounge where they're also selling the cannabis. The other topic that we talked about amongst our group was taxation. Again, the primary reason, you know, again, I don't want to debate, you know, the social impacts of cannabis because that's already been decided by the state. But the primary reason in my mind that we're even having this conversation is the tax benefits to the village. The village has, the city, our city has an ability to also tax this and enjoy the benefits of that tax. Our group thought that even though we're able to tax up to 3%, the recommendation by the committee was, well, maybe perhaps considering something less than that. We're not terribly married to the topic of lower than 3% or 3%, but there was some discussion that there may be some benefit to the town by having a rate less than 3%. Because these things are separated as far as they are by state, and there's a limited number of these facilities that are going to be placed in northern Illinois, this may be somewhat of a moot topic because the differential could be pretty nominal, but we just wanted to throw that out there for the committee that maybe you might want to consider something less than 3% as an inducement to have someone located in our town. That's about those are the recommendations coming out of the committee. I'm going to pause for a second. Guys want to make any comments as part of that? Yeah, because these guys are really passionate about it, and I think it's just wonderful. Please do.
Hi, I'm Sandy Stricker. I live at 403 Walden Lane, Prospect Heights. I've been here 6 years. I've been a registered nurse for 38 years, and I think that there's many challenges patients need and have when they're in pain. Many doctors do not support medical cannabis, which makes it difficult to obtain a medical card. First, you have to have a diagnosis that qualifies you. Right now, there are 52 diagnoses that can go from ALS to autism to cancer to chronic pain, Crohn's, irritable bowel syndrome, migraines, and the list goes on. So the problem that we do see is that if we didn't let it come into our community and offer it at a lower tax rate, as he had mentioned, that it just makes it more difficult for patients who really need pain relief to go back to the black market to get it. So why not have it in our own backyard? Right now, marijuana dispensaries do not accept medical insurance, so this is all out of their pocket. I've done some investigations regarding CBD trials all around the United States, and it shows that it works. There's still no evidence-based studies to date on cannabis, but I did find that in 2019, 57% of arthritic patients who have tried marijuana or CBD for medical reasons, 90% say it helped. So they are seeing more and more that cannabis is really needed and used. I mean, I know that we have a huge epidemic with opioids, and you know, I currently work for a company where I constantly see people who go in and have surgeries. They have hip replacements, they have knee replacements, they have shoulder replacements, and they get pain medication in the hospital. They go home with a very low dose of Ultram. They're not going home with any other medications, and they're in need of cannabis. So I see that there is a huge need for it in our community. We were talking about the seniors. We talked about having the social aspect. You know, it would be nice for them to be able to go someplace and know that they're safe to be able to smoke and then go home. So I'm in favor of the social. We had a lot of discussion about it, and I just think as a group that we wanted you guys to know how important it is that we bring it into our own village. And, you know, it's here, it's coming, we don't have a choice. It's just a matter of, do we want to possibly make some money as a result of having it in our community versus letting our neighbors have it? And the reason that we came up with a lower taxation rate is because of our neighbors, they had a higher. So maybe they'll come off of Milwaukee or come off of Rand Road, which would be the two places that we were thinking that a dispensary would be most applicable for our community. And, you know, make some money off of it as well.
Good evening. I'm Sharon Hoffman. I am not a nurse, although I am a substance abuse counselor. So I've dealt a lot with the anguishes and problems that parents have dealt with regarding children and going through a lot of the difficulties that they've had, particularly regarding getting hooked on painkillers and things like that for injuries that they've had in sports and a lot of things. I've had even some personal experiences when my children have had knee injuries or shoulder injuries, and back in the day, they really would just give it to you. They'd give you a prescription and refill the prescription, and then later on, you'd have back pain and you'd go back, and now when you go back for a pain in your back, they don't give you that. They just say, look, you're gonna have to look at something else. And so people will turn to alternative ways. I don't have a lot of experience with, you know, marijuana use. I haven't really been into a dispensary or anything with the medical marijuana. But I do know that when people were dying or facing some significant pain, they would look to get it whatever way they could. And if that's what they're going to do, that you're going to do. The reality is, in January 1st, this is going to be legal. You do have the medical marijuana, and I understand that. I've been watching the newspapers. I've seen the towns dealing with it, going back and forth, going from, oh, I'm just scared, so I just don't want it to be here. But the fact of the matter is, it is all around us. Many of the suburbs around us are going to do it. We cannot insulate Prospect Heights by just saying no. Just closing our eyes to it, I don't think that that's going to really be a true, accurate picture of what it is. So what I would just say is that take all this information and look at it, and look at all the people that live in Prospect Heights. It's not just for, you know, we want to protect, you know, the children or the people that are under 21. We have to do that for alcohol. We have to do that for all of the other vices that, you know, that are going out there, whether it's gambling or things like that. It is here. But again, it's about parenting. It's about public safety. We did have the chief come in and talk to us just regarding how the marijuana thing is playing out in the towns, what he sees on the streets, because we are aware, we want to make sure that whatever we do put in place here, that the proper safety things are in place so that the people that need to come and get what they want can do that, And the ones that are going to be addicted or are going to want to go for the high power stuff, they're not going to come to these places. They're going to go to their local dealer and try and get what they're going to get anyway. So this is really about the whole town. It's just not about, oh, well, if we set up 5 or 6 here, which is really unrealistic, because really the market is going to dictate whether we even get one. We may not even get one. But I think we should have a plan in place if we're going to do this and pursue it with a very well-rounded understanding of what we're looking at.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Mayor, you could tell the amount of passion that we had on our committee. We had really great discussions, and thank you, too. That was really fantastic. I mean,
I was,
wasn't it these people came in, to pour out the hearts to you,
Right.
and I think they're really reflective of a lot of members in our community. I'm very, very proud of those 2 women for joining here tonight. With that, and I would add also, these, when we talk about the lounges, number 1 or 2, just the dispensaries, you got to be 21 to be able to even get into that shop. It's not like a liquor store or going into Jewel and having your kids walk with you buy the booze. You got to be 21 to get into these things. So there's other restrictions in the state statute that will help us control this a little more. I'm going to pause for a moment. I know there's a bunch of questions. I know there's a lot of emotion behind this, and people have strong views. So let's open it up if anyone's got any questions.
Alderman Quinn.
I understand today in the patch that New Age down the street has been approved. They're medical marijuana right now, and they've been approved to do the commercial side of it. And I did sit in on one of your meetings, and I have to tell you, you guys really, I think, did an amazing job.
Well, you kept on asking questions, too. I go, oh, it's like a hijacking our session. I'm like,
I did.
I'm giving you a hard time.
It was great.
Yeah.
My concern with Prospect Heights, right now they're going to be putting in a very huge national facility that's coming into Northbrook on Skokie Boulevard. It's enormous. I heard also, I think the patch article mentioned Mount Prospect is also going to be having one. So my question is I mean, personally, I don't want to have a place where people are going to be able to go and smoke and then drive home. And I know you mentioned in one of the meetings, okay, but they do it in the bars, but we may not want to add to it. I don't. That's just my opinion. I think that people, if they do need it for medical reasons, I do know it's an important access for a lot of people. Our town's very small, and so I'm curious. You gave some anecdotal information about this, but what they're talking about right now in the very brief research I've done is that they're not going to take people off of opioids just to say you can have marijuana. So are you suggesting that people are going to maybe self-medicate where they have better access to cannabis versus getting an opioid prescribed to them?
Absolutely. Right now, they're going to the black market. It's just a matter of them being honest with their provider. I'm sorry. Thank you. I had a feeling. It's a matter of them being honest with their providers and sharing with them that they are smoking marijuana. Because unfortunately, the healthcare community, including doctors, including education for student doctors, they don't give them education about marijuana and what marijuana does with other drugs and the drug interactions. There has to be better education among the police force, as you were sharing with us, that the police officers have to know what to do, what to be looking for, because it is different than alcohol. I mean, and there is not a test out right now that will determine how much THC a person has in their body that they can do on the street. Yes, they have to haul them into a hospital to have a blood test done now, or a urine test done now, or a haircut done. But there isn't something at this moment. There will be, because I know they're working on it. I mean, I've heard, we were talking about it in our committee. But to answer your question, it's here. We don't have a choice. As of January 1st, it's legal in our state to smoke marijuana if you're 21 in your own home. You're allowed to have 30 grams. That's great, but will people go to the black market still? Yes. Will students still go and get marijuana? Absolutely. Will they get it from parents? Who knows? But at least the stuff that they're buying at a dispensary, at a medical facility, if they have a medical card, and/or a facility, if they don't have a medical card, they're going to pay more, but at least it is better quality, and we know it's not going to be tampered with, like a lot of the vapes that are out there now that are causing some deaths. So there's a lot of things to consider.
The other question I have is about the tax. All the other municipalities that I've spoken with are going with a 3% because
Yeah, 3%.
it's 3%.
Yeah, that's-
And I don't really think, and I don't know how you guys came up with the fact that you thought that if you did it at 2%, someone's going to stop here and buy it, because I don't think that's going to happen. I mean,
You know what, it's because of the distance involved between locations.
Right.
We just thought it was just a little bit incentive. How do we get people into Prospect Heights? You know, so it's like, is that enough? I don't know.
I would like to get them here with pizza,
I don't know.
not
I
pot.
don't know.
I'm just saying.
You know what? It's just, I go to Costco for my gas because it's a penny cheaper, and I go buy 3 or 4 gas stations to get. I know the distance is not large, but that was really our only thinking.
Okay.
Number one, and number two is, you know, if this works out, we're hoping it does. We're hoping someone actually relocates in our community, because that would be good financial benefit. The thinking was then, at some point, the revenue will level off, and then maybe we could go to 3% and get revenue growth after things are leveled off. That was all part of our thinking on that.
Okay. And the last thing that I'll comment on, just to be transparent, I work for the Northbrook Chamber of Commerce, so I know about the facility going into Northbrook. It's an enormous facility. So they're looking at, with that footprint, their projection is $750,000 a year.
In taxes.
In taxes.
And that's just from the tax on a cannabis, not on the real estate.
Correct. So, however, the studies have all shown that we're being very unrealistic. 60 Minutes just did a thing about California, and that the whole premise about making a windfall on taxes, it's just not going to be there right now. A lot of the places are not having, really the windfalls that they thought they would.
I don't think we'll disagree with you on that.
Yeah, okay.
We all have to be realistic.
Yeah.
This is not going to be a panacea for, the town's financial
Right.
concerns.
$250,000 is not going to come into Prospect Heights.
Yeah. But you don't know for sure. But
No.
we're not here to make an assessment of business plans.
Yeah, right.
But let's not overestimate what it is. I saw that same 60 Minutes special. I go,
Yeah.
yeah, not surprised.
Yeah,
Right?
okay.
But, well, I mean, the chief will tell you, the black market for marijuana has been established for 80 years, if not longer. And it's not going to go away.
Right.
It's really people, I'm going to look at like you or me, because I'm not going to do this. Anyway, I just don't know. Want to have a little more assurance into quality and, concerned about what the heck am I getting. Having said that, other states have had great success, too.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Alderman Cameron.
Sorry.
Okay, so my feedback on that is that I know it's going to be legalized in Illinois, but it's still federally illegal. And also, they did a segment on ABC on Sunday about workplace and understanding the workplace. You know what, you can have, you can smoke marijuana and get it through the black market, you can get it through, a legal place. But on the other concern, with, the elderly people or if they're working, is their job going to let them use it? It might be a benefit, but there's also that.
I think that's way beyond, our committee. I do, that does, I think about this all the time. So I'm a partner in a large accounting firm, and I worry about, drug abuse is a huge problem in our country. I mean, and it cuts across all socioeconomic classes. And I'm worried about, which one of my partners put something up their nose the night before and went and saw an audit opinion. That bothers me. But
We have no control over
I can't control that. And so I don't.
A place of employment has the opportunity, and as they do, when you apply for a job, they do a drug test.
Yeah.
After you work for that company, do they do drug tests? Bus drivers, policemen, what other?
Yeah, there were some, actually the state statutes, prohibit certain occupations,
Right,
like
but
first
there are-
responders and.
Right, but
Yeah,
there
bus
are certain
drivers,
jobs that you just can't smoke.
Correct.
They're going to drug test you. I'm a nurse. I've worked for Blue Cross for 10 years. I've been a nurse for 38 years. I've had probably, in the 38 years, maybe 6 times I've been drug tested. In 38 years. And I'm in a profession that should be tested on a regular basis.
Correct.
Like police officers, paramedics, you know, your first responders. But it doesn't happen. So my company is a no drug policy. Even if I had a medical card, still a no drug policy. So there's nothing we can do about it though. As of January 1st, marijuana is legal to anybody that wants to smoke it if they're 21 or older. So we can't take that away. It's just a matter of educating our population and our community. And it's a way to bring more money into the system.
Yeah, and the way I look at it too, it's, yes, drug abuse is a huge problem. But alcohol abuse is probably 20 times worse. I don't have the statistics. I'm just, saying it from what I see in the community and the problems that I've experienced in my extended family. So, yeah, it's a concern, it's an issue.
I mean, I'm just looking at the
I
bigger
can't,
picture,
I'm not
not
going to
just,
draw the moral issues out.
sell, buy, it's.
I know, I mean, go down Rand Road, how many liquor stores do you see, even in our town?
All right.
And close to the schools too, so it's like,
Yeah.
Can we move on? Alderman Cameron, we're good?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, for Alderman Wendy.
So one of the things that, I believe it was discussed at the committee, but one of the things that needs to be brought out also is that although, you talked about no cap, but you identified 3 areas where a dispensary would be probably most likely, be
yeah,
able
they
to
would be
utilize.
compatible with the town and the
And-
surrounding commercial districts.
Right.
Right.
But still, I mean, even with all that, the person who applies is going to have to go through the zoning board. They're going to have to get a special use, apply and qualify for this
Yeah.
special use. So, and then they have to go to the council for approval.
Yeah,
So
you're
it's not
absolutely
like,
right.
it's not like, you're allowing anything in particular. You're simply not prohibiting it, and you're giving the market a chance, and you're giving the city a chance to be able to make some revenue. So I guess the point is that you're not, if the city, if for some reason, either the council or the PZBA decides there's an issue, it's going to come up, and then both the PZBA and the council can vote on it. So we're not just giving away
Wendy,
anything.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because we did talk about that, and maybe I said it too quickly, but we did want to express, it is special permit requirement in the commercial districts that we mentioned. So I totally agree with you. You're going to have 2 additional qualifiers that a potential business would need to go through before they could even, get a business license in our town. Excellent point.
And the other thing is that I think that was also, pointed out that one of the reasons also for the on-site consumption was people coming from outside of our town, from out of town, would have a place to utilize or to smoke after they purchase, the cannabis. Otherwise, there'd be no place for them. And they can't, a lot of them can't go back to where they live and smoke it. So
Yeah.
if they're
But by the way,
out of
we're not
state-
just talking about smoking cannabis here either. There's a
Right.
lot of edible.
There's a lot of edible products,
Stuff.
correct. So there'd be a place to consume,
Yeah, but
whether,
you're absolutely right. The hotels will not allow you to smoke
right.
in your rooms, and you don't want people consuming this in public places. And so people are going to be coming from out of town, and, they could be directed to a cannabis lounge. And then this way they could spend money in our town, and we could reap the tax benefits from it. And then, not putting at risk by doing it in open spaces. Or getting kicked out of the hotel because a guy quit smoking. Yeah.
All right?
And we do
Very
have,
good.
a large hotel district too, that invariably we would expect them to, a certain portion of those residents or visitors, wanting to consume.
And I just want to make one other point. One other point, there was an issue regarding daycare because it was excluded from the required distance,
yeah.
right, for schools. And it's and I understand that, there could be people having daycare in their homes. I mean, daycare usually is not a mobile thing. People don't go outside, a specific area.
My thing with daycare is like, little children, like 4 years old, I mean, they're not gonna be running around and, you know, trying to get in.
Actually,
And-
daycare children do run around, and they go outside of the building.
And hopefully
so-
they don't go too
They
far.
don't go-
But you gotta be
they don't go
21 to
too
even get
far.
into this place.
Right, exactly. There's a lot of strict security.
Yeah, and then if you're concerned about, because you will have control over their advertising and signage as well, when you get to zoning and eventual council approval.
There's a lot of restrictions on that.
So, you know, it's just not gonna be, ooh, come here, you know, get high. So, and then you, again, you have a couple cracks at doing that. So we actually, on that preschool stuff, it's because of, you know, them being these small children and plus the 21 restriction, we didn't feel it's important to have a setback. I was gonna say they're not as inquiring minds as high school students, but that would be bad, because they are actually, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank
can we
you for
move?
those comments.
Thank you.
Alderman Ludwigson?
I just want to clarify some things. There's no secret that the council's going to vote in favor of a dispensary, that there's going to be marijuana in Prospect Heights. But I just want to kind of, sometimes things are said in these meetings, like I did it the last time. I want to clarify it so people understand it. Lola's is here to ask for a special use on the Rand Road corridor. So everybody's getting on this special use is really special, but it's a pizza joint on Rand Road that has to go through the same
And by the way,
process.
very good pizza.
The same process that the dispensary will, just to clear the air. It's not like we're creating a higher threshold for somebody to come in. What they're doing is what the dispensary will have to do. So just, it's not unique.
Absolutely.
The second thing is about the use on premises. I've known a few people that have used pot in the past when I was growing up. These people don't use marijuana like they drink. Drinking, you can go to the sports page and have 2 beers over a 2-hour period watching a football game with not the intention of getting hammered. I don't know anybody, unless it's for medicinal purposes, that smokes just to smoke it to be social. Marijuana is very different from alcohol that way because you buy it in order to have something happen. Whereas drinking today has become a social thing where you have one in your hand because you're in a place that has it and you don't get hammered. So I disagree with you on the social use locations because they would be
But
going
again,
there
the
to
reason,
get
the
high.
reason was, I don't want people doing it in public places.
Just like alcohol. I don't want anybody doing that either, but I promise you, when you're driving home, you could see somebody, you know, maybe in the summertime, more so than now, walking around with a beer can. So I get that. You're not going to do away with it because you allow them to smoke it in 2 places in Prospect Heights. Hotels don't let you smoke cigarettes in their hotel rooms if it's a non-smoking room. How many times have we walked into a hotel room as a non-smoker and said, wait a minute, you know, they couldn't have done this because this is death by beheading if you smoke in this hotel room. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, but that stuff really
So
smells
you're
bad.
not-
I mean, people are gonna know it.
You're not gonna be, no, to me, cigarettes are the same way. If
Yeah.
you were a smoker, I'd be, you know, I could smell it on your coat if you're in the same room with me because I don't smoke.
Yeah.
So the other myth too is this, the other uses, you named the 4 uses.
Well, they're for that commercial kind of.
They're not commercial. I just wanna.
No,
cut you
hold
off
on.
at the
So
pass.
you're not buying this stuff at those locations.
I
That's what I meant.
I've read
I
everything on
distinguish
this.
retail versus you know.
I've read everything you guys provided, I get it, but when you use the term commercial, again, there's a misnomer with people that they think commercial means it's bringing money into the city. If we had a craft grower, if we had one of those haulers, whatever you want to call it, if we had an infuser or the regular grower in town, we would not see sales tax from that. Then people say, yeah, but they're building a building and they're going to make a big EAV on the building because now it's worth $2 million because they're growing pot in it. We won't see any more money because of it. We don't have a property tax. The only thing that we see from this is the sales tax from the dispensary, period. That's it. And possibly a licensing cost, just like we do with our bars and restaurants where they pay a license to sell alcohol. So there's a lot of misconceptions that this is a panacea for trying to
Look,
bring in money.
I want to downplay that this is a massive financial benefit to the town. I don't see it yet. We just have to see how it plays out, but
Thornton's
I don't
is
think we
gonna-
turn a nose to it either.
Right. Thornton's is going to do better for us than a dispensary will.
I'm sorry?
Thornton's, the new Thornton's that just opened up is going to do better for us. I mean, it's
But Speedway had.
100 plus,
Yeah.
$100,000 a year. But the other thing too is this idea that we have to have these locations for people seniors to go to, people use it, you know, self-medicating to use it, which they can get medicinally now. You can go on Euclid and go pick it up there with a card. But you know what we don't have in Prospect Heights? We don't have a CVS. And we got one Walgreens. How can a town of our size survive on one Walgreens? We do. So this idea that we would have to have 2 or 3 Walgreens, or a Walgreens and a CVS and another store, it doesn't make any sense. If we have one, we're gonna take care of the revenue side of getting it if we have one dispensary. This idea that we have to have multiples, and I agree with you, zoning-wise, we're not gonna necessarily be able to have more than 2 or 3. But I don't think just because you can, you should. And the initial rush for this.
I understand.
The initial rush for this is the January 1st date. After that, all bets are off. You know, it doesn't matter, because if you're not in that first group, you might not ever get into a group. So I don't see why there's a need to have more than one. I don't see why there's a need to have the others, because we're not going to generate any revenue off of it. I don't see why we need to smoke in it, because, like I say, like I told you, people drink outside of bars anyway. So I can tell you I'm in favor of one, but I haven't heard any rationale for those other reasons to say yes.
You have to remember, we got together as an ad hoc committee to make recommendations for you guys. That we tabled and we talked and we, you know, like we said, we met weekly for the last 4 weeks. And I really think that when we came up with this, you know, you guys had a timetable, and if you didn't make this recommendation to apply for this by a certain time, you were going to be out of luck totally. So the decision of how many to have was based on our small community and what would be best for us. So we thought one, we originally talked about one, and then we talked about maybe 2, because one being maybe on a location on Milwaukee and one being on Rand Road, our busy roads that people are going to be passing through all the time. So that's why we came up with those numbers.
All right, by the same token.
It's really not, it was more like, we don't want to put a limit on it. We just, you know, the market will determine whether or not anyone wants to relocate in our town as well. And we just thought that the Milwaukee quarter and the Rand quarter were just totally different thoroughfares through our town. And the Milwaukee quarter being more the hotels, and, you know, it's a different traffic pattern, and.
Correct.
And then.
And there's no Walgreens on the Milwaukee corridor either, just as FYI, so.
Well,
I mean,
but Pat, you go across the street until Rand, or to Mount Prospect or whatever,
Right.
yeah.
I think we'll do plenty well with Arlington Heights backing out and having that entire geographical area with nothing there, yeah, on Rand Road. So I agree with you there, that's gonna be a good deal there.
Just by the way, because I know you brought up the topic about, you know, you really don't want any of the high school kids there. My thinking is the likely locations would be on the other side, the west side of Rand, giving you that 4-lane buffer, which I think would be
I agree
good
with
thing
you.
as well.
I think that's what's naturally gonna happen.
Yeah.
But as
So
far
I was
as-
actually thinking of an ordinance, sort of a hybrid ordinance that says the lesser of 700 feet or the separation of a 4-lane highway. I don't know if you could ever work that language, but that's what I originally thought, but everyone thought it was goofy, because I wanted to make sure it was on the other side of Rand.
And as far as the way that the number of locations happen, that doesn't happen by ordinance anyway. It happens by a separate ordinance, which hasn't been discussed yet. It's not part of the cannabis ordinance or special use ordinance that dictates how many we can have.
Well,
It's done by the number of
the state
licenses.
requires that on the retail side, they have to be at least 1,500 feet apart. And so that limits on Rand Road only one. We sort of did the math.
I think it's ironic, the state says that they should be 1,500 feet apart, but speaks to nothing when it says how close they can be to a school. I think that's, our state is.
I know.
All right, these points have been brought up.
Sales tax too, the 3% go into your sales tax thing. I don't know where you buy your groceries, where you said you buy your gas in Mount Prospect. We already have a lower tax than everybody around us, so adding the 3% will keep us below everybody else anyway. So we will.
That's a good point, yeah. So that one was the least one that we're passionate about, put it that way.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderman Dolick.
Thank you. I'll try not to repeat everyone's points.
Thank
A lot of
you.
Good points here. First of all, I agree that the medicinal use is excellent. There are a lot of people who can use it for pain management, a variety of things. I think that's wonderful. But then going to the next issue of on-site consumption, I don't think that most people who would use it for medicinal purposes are going to smoke it on site. They're going to get it and use it periodically at home. That's my opinion, anyway. The other issue with on-site consumption is, and I listened to the meeting online, and I heard Chief Zalaki speak on this, as well as other debates on it. States that originally got on board with this, Colorado as an example, their rates of people driving under the influence of marijuana shot up dramatically. And as was mentioned, and there's not a real test for it that the police.
Yeah, you're right, there isn't. Not that we know of.
And so I feel like I don't feel comfortable with lounges in our city like that. I'm in favor of a dispensary, but I don't like the on-site consumption. And you mentioned people coming from other areas, well, they can't get it where they are, so they come there and smoke. How do they get home? They're going to drive home, unless they have a designated
Uber,
driver
or
that's
walk
gonna-
to a hotel.
I agree.
They drive a lot of times.
They drive a lot of times, and that's not acceptable, but I feel like we're just adding to the problem. Lastly, I really want to ask this as an open question. I'm not trying to direct anyone in any particular area. If we have, and this is based on surrounding communities, who has opted in and who hasn't, if we have one dispensary, as an example, and it generates whatever the revenue is, whatever that dollar amount is, do we think that if we have 2 or 3 dispensaries, that it's going to be 2 or 3 times that amount of revenue, or is it going to be roughly the same amount of revenue, just spread out to 3 different struggling businesses? And as I said, I'm trying to ask that as an open question, but I feel like I would rather see one successful dispensary in the right location than to have 3 small businesses all competing for that same amount. I don't think people are going to be coming in from miles and miles away going to these
I
various
mean,
locations.
I'm just thinking about in terms of Milwaukee and Rand and the traffic patterns on those 2 streets. So I'm not sure they would necessarily cannibalize each other. Look, I haven't done the business study, and I agree to that. But that was sort of my thinking, that you got the different traffic patterns, you got the hotel district on one side, and then.
And I understand that.
Different kind of.
But the other thing is, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I understand that Arlington Heights opted out, Mount Prospect opted out, Wheeling.
Not, they opted in. Mount Prospect opted in.
And they're opening a place
in.
too.
Right.
Okay. Wheeling is in.
Mayor,
Glenview is out.
Mayor, can I say
One at a
something?
time, please.
Well, I'll just finish up briefly. I
Right,
think that
thank you.
the area along Rand Road would draw in people from the Arlington Heights side, so I think that would be a great location. With evidently Mount Prospect and Wheeling, that's right down the road in one direction or the other. I just think that that's something to be considered. And whatever, lastly, whatever this revenue is, I think that it should not be the only factor that is considered in this. There are many factors involved. So it's not just a dollar sign that we need to look at. So those are my comments. I think we should consider this carefully.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Tom.
All right, Nick, I want to, again, just do a shout out to the committee members. They just did a fantastic job. Again, this is a very sensitive topic. People are very emotional, and I think the committee really came together, and so good luck with your decision.
Good, you guys did a great job. I was at one of the meetings also, and it was scary how good you were. Thank you. All right, Joe?
Okay, no appointments, confirmations. Do we have any public comment items? John Anda, 408 West Dorset, repair water line.
Okay. Hello, John. Good to see you again and again and again.
Your local pain in the neck here.
No, you're not.
Mr. Mayor, City Council things, I'm just following up. Last time we met, our little gathering, you had asked Mark to have Pat Glenn, I believe it is, take a look at the feasibility of replacing that line that my neighbors are here too, John and Susan, what the best option would be to do that. Meantime, I've had the lot Julie come out, mark it all off to help facilitate maybe a decision on let's do it this way or that way, if we do it at all. And I've had requested 6 contractors to come out and give me some prices. 1 showed up, so they must be busy. They've all done work with the city before, so.
All right.
Lions did show up and gave me a price, which I thought was ridiculous. You know, there's about $1,400 worth of PVC that would be used for that type of situation. And so they were at, on the high end, $23,000. And that's doing all the sod and all that business too, but.
All right, let's stick with the topic of what we've done so far. Mark?
Yes, sir. Pat Glenn looked into it. He's talked to a couple different contractors to get prices, and he came up with around $40,000 to replace the pipe from Marion all the way to Dorset. We talked about the original question you had, which was just to do the piece on your property.
All right,
And-
the other part wasn't blocked.
Right, well, the other part is the same age and vintage. And as we talked through it, he thought that if we're gonna do half of it, it'd be silly not to do that entire section as long as it'd be part of the master plan to help drain that area.
Well, if you want to replace a good pipe, I guess you can do that, but it's, the pipe works, tell me.
Well, the pipe in your yard works, it just takes a long time to drain.
20% of it does, yeah.
Right, so it's the same idea as the pipe was placed around the same time frame.
Right,
From,
but didn't have a big tree sitting over it like mine did.
So-
That's why I think.
All right, let's give them a chance to talk and
So-
finish up, and then you can come back.
so basically, he has looked at it. The whole thing would be about $40,000 to replace the pipe from Marion through. If you had an estimate around 23, it would about half, so it's in the same price point as what he came up with. The concern Pat had was, we have a list of other residents who have contacted him that they're basically on the same situation. They'd like to see their projects that have been not denied, but put on hold, pushed forward now at the same rate. So Pat and I went through it. He said there's not $40,000 in the budget this year to do a small storm drain project. We could consider it for next year's budget, which is the considerations for that budget start in December. But a grasp from council on how we want to address stormwater projects. In 2016-17, we had some areas that were done. In the last year, we didn't do any residential stormwater projects of this type, where we're trying to drain yards to help remove standing water or flooding issues. This project, if it was done, would help drain these backyards quicker, but it's not going to solve the flooding problem on Dorset. If the system's full and water is coming up in the street and it's cresting over the roadway, this pipe wouldn't be doing anything. So it's not, for the 2 issues that we talked about, this takes care of standing water in the rear yards and helping it drain at a faster rate, but it's not improving the flooding problems on Dorset in the big picture.
Were we able to clean that one pipe that's plugged?
No, sir. We were able to rod up it a little bit, and it was too collapsed for us to go any farther. So,
So you'd have to dig it up.
correct.
All right, is there,
So it's currently on private property, going from Dorset to the backyard and then jogging over to Marion.
I have a little drawing.
do we know who the property owner is?
John Anda is one of them, and then his rear neighbor, I believe Mr. Sims.
All right. So can we do something, I've seen, I've walked, I've looked, I've smelled.
All right, this is the
I
pipe
know
we're
what
talking
you're,
about
yes,
right here.
I know what you're talking
I
about.
want to donate that pipe to the city.
Okay, we'll make a monument out of it.
It's really a city pipe, because it was put in to drain
I-
Marion.
We've talked about this many
This
times.
is not our yard pipe. This is,
All
we're
right.
talking about draining the backyard. This is not
Okay.
a backyard issue.
We can't spend another hour like we have in the past.
Right.
We know the problem. The question is, what is the solution?
Right, and we agree that this pipe benefits Marion, benefits your backyard's
This is the only
draining.
drain Marion has, is through our yard.
And that is not,
City pipe
and as
is what it
we
is.
stated before, it's not unique along the city. We have other areas that have been, that are on the list. It's not saying that they were denied, but they're on the list for when something were to come up. So the concept was to get certain areas done, the council would have to look at putting some funds towards it in the next year's budget and what the ranking would be, if we're going to go off the Steve Perez ranking of the 53 projects, or if there wants to be a little different put on it based on resident input, cost sharing, anything like that to help these projects get a higher priority.
Why can't they fix the bad section, and then the one that's working fine, do that next year, if you want to do it? Fix the bad section. Now it's 180 feet of 8-inch PVC. It's $1,500 worth of pipe. So if you want to put a $43,000 price tag on fixing something that needs.
That's
fixed
not what he
now,
said, don't misquote him.
Right, it is, there'd have to be, first of all, engineering would have to work with the property owner, John, for an easement agreement, because it's not our property to touch. We have the right of way out in the street, but the pipe is all privately installed on private property. So that part of it, us creating a draft, a project to do it, we have to have the rights to do the work on the property.
Okay, we plan this, nobody's going to go digging or replacing tonight or many days to come with the weather being what it is, et cetera.
No, absolutely, but the suggestion from the engineer is, if we're going to excavate and put a new pipe in from here to the backyard, we should go all the way to Marion, which is the other rest of the block. If we're going to tear up one section to benefit these 3 or 4 backyards, or 4 or 5 backyards, we should increase the flow because the pipe is all the same vintage and the same deterioration.
Mark, I fully understand and agree, but what can we do to get ready for the eventuality of replacing that? For example, can we get the easements? That wouldn't cost us a lot of money to have people sign over their pipeline area as an easement or something that we can get our hands on
Yes,
without spending
that
very
makes
much
sense.
money at all.
The large picture for this Dorset area of stormwater drainage is a $5 to $8 million project, or 3
Right.
to 5, or wherever the engineer's with it. This little finger of it, near the tip, is something that would be, needed to be done on that project anyways, once we get to that point. So this is. the
But
very tip.
we would need the easement anyway,
Correct.
whatever we do or don't do.
Mr. Mayor?
That's
Yes,
correct.
sir, go
We-
ahead.
We did this, we've done this before with drainage ditches and stuff in the front yards, side yards. Why don't we just, during budget time, set an amount that we're gonna put towards these types of projects, whether it be $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000, have the engineer come up with criteria to say that the people whose property it passes through will give, we don't have to make this, we don't have to employ a bunch of people here to try and create these easements. Just simple access agreements that the attorney could draw up. We don't have to go and get it surveyed and everything else. Come up with some criteria to do this. Set aside $300,000 or $400,000, $200,000 or $300,000, and then maybe think about doing a match where it's a 50-50 match. The first people to sign up for it, if we get more than the $400,000, kind of like how we did trees at one time like that, where if you pay half, we pay half, we'll plant a tree.
Right.
Do something like that. Budget the amount, because like the mayor said, this isn't gonna happen next week, next month, or even by April or May. It's something that's gonna happen down the road. I know that's not what you want to hear, but realistically, we can't just do this one little thing. We're gonna have to go out and have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of them for a contractor to bid out, do it all at once as a project and take care of it, and have some criteria to do it. Whether it be matching, or whether it be the worst case, the engineer says this needs to be done, or this will create the most benefit for the most yards, just something that makes
Well,
sense.
you keep saying yards. This is the entire street of Marion is drained.
There are
this one line.
you got the entire street of Dorset that goes underwater if we get enough.
That's
water.
phase 2. That's the 3 to 5 year.
But
We
you know
get
how
hit
many
with
phase
this-
ones we have? You
This,
think
we
you're
get hit with this type of water every.
Your water's
3
not
months.
special than that on Clarendon, and that than Frankie Court, and that on Lancaster. There are all kinds of people that have this problem. I agree with you.
It's the whole street
Fortunately,
of
you're
Marion
here talking
using
about
our
it.
yard to drain their line.
All right, we're not here to argue.
This
we're
is
here
not a
to talk.
backyard issue. We keep talking about a backyard. This drains Marion.
Is it your
One
front
line-
yard? Is it your front or back?
One line,
Is it your front or backyard that holds water?
Back.
it runs through the yard.
Don't say it's not a backyard
It
issue.
doesn't run through the yard because the pipe is screwed up. So most of it backs up.
We
The
got
pipe wasn't backed
miles
up,
and miles.
it would
of
flow
screwed up
through, just like the other yard across the street. They do the same damn thing, and they never flood because the line is open. This line is broken. It's a city line. We're using it to
It's
bury.
not a city line. Don't-
It is a city line.
I got it, it's not a city line. It's not an easement. There's no dedication of it.
Hang on. We know the history of the line, basically, from what we've understood. We've looked at the maps. We have an engineer involved who's come up with this as the project plan, if we were to go forward with this. And the concern is the funding of it, that there's not 40,000 in the budget left over this year. And we don't have the layout for next year's fiscal plan yet, if we're gonna do a stormwater plan or not. We didn't do one this last year. There's a bigger problem with this neighborhood that's been identified. And the engineer's goal is to start where the drain would be, not the tip of it, to create flow, not to move the water from Dorset down to the next block. And 6 months or 8 months from now, we're dealing with the neighbors 1 block south, saying you forced more water down on us faster now. Now we're flooding out because you did it the reverse direction, which is the Nick Sherry issue. That whole area was done and forced water to there. So this property is like what you'd call Drury or Waterman over there, where a little project was done, or a big project, and pushed water a little farther down before you were able to relieve it. So that's what the concern is from engineering right now.
Well, I don't care what engineering's concern is. I'm telling you, Marion is using our yard to get to Dorset.
Unfortunately,
That's what they do, they use our
Every-
yard. But the
they-
pipe is broke, so
Right.
it backs up because the pipe is broke.
And-
How hard can that be to understand for you?
the
gentlemen?
majority of properties
It's not a
in
$40,000
town.
project to
No.
fix 180 feet of pipe. I've been dealing with this problem for 40 years. I've got the second building permit.
I understand.
In this
And
city.
I don't want to argue with you, but there's plenty of residents who've put in that 180 feet of pipe on their own because they want to
It's a
eliminate the
Marion
system.
Street problem, not our problem.
All right,
The
please.
goddamn
It's-
pipe comes from Marion.
Right.
It's the drain Marion. It's the only drain
No,
Marion has.
hang on.
No,
We're gonna-
hold on. We've heard all this many times. We're looking for a solution. We're not looking for screaming at each other, because I'll have everybody removed.
It wasn't done by a homeowner. This was put in by Prospect Heights to drain Marion, and now it's draining in our
And
backyard.
for 40 years, you haven't complained?
I have complained.
40 years?
I've complained about it. It's always.
40 years?
Trust me, I've complained. This pipe hasn't been
Thank
that
you.
bad of
All right,
a,
you're saying yes, thank you.
when they had a big tree over there, that tree actually fell down, it was so large. That tree screwed up just where that section was jammed, because they measured how long that line went,
I
138 feet.
got it.
So-
Thank you. What do we do about it? So, Alderman Ludwigson, you had a house right down at the end of the street. Did you get flooding there?
On Lancaster?
Yeah.
Yeah, backyard. I mean, it's a common problem. To be frank with you.
It's a backyard because the pipe is
I'm
broke.
probably never running for office again, so I'm gonna say this because I'm just gonna say
Oh,
it the
you
way
said
is.
it
Here we go.
before.
If it's that simple, and you're sitting on a $300,000-$400,000 house, honest to God, like in Nick's words to Nick Sherry one time, why don't you take care of it? I mean, don't you want to better your own property? If it's, you keep this underscoring how easy and simple and cheap it is.
So you want me to replace the line for Marion? This is a city street.
If my backyard was flooding and I could fix it, and I had something there existing to just fix in order to make it better,
This is
for
a
God's sake, I would do it.
This hasn't been this bad of a problem for that many, I've been there 40 years, it's gotten worse.
I don't think the problem's bad enough for you yet, because you would take care of it if you wanted to fix it.
You know,
It's up to my foundation, and I don't know what to do.
So
I don't know how
the city wouldn't have run a pipe up to your foundation.
No, the water, that water comes into my yard.
We're getting off track here.
All right.
I'm lower
I can,
Water is coming in up to my foundation.
Yeah, it does. It comes
But if
right
his
up to-
problem will fix your problem, why don't you work with him and get it done?
I put the pipe in, I put berms
So
in.
now-
I spent over 10
Chief,
million already.
be prepared to remove these people from the council if we can't get a logical conclusion to what we're trying to do. And what we're trying to do is come up with plans that we haven't done before, and we've got a pipe that we own, according to you, and I believe you. Cost sharing is not a bad idea. I've had to do it if I want to get rid of a problem. Right now, where do we stand? How soon do
What
we
we have
ask?
is,
Hold
we
on,
have a,
hold on. How soon do we ask Mr. Ducharme if we put $400,000, put $400,000 in a budget? How soon could we get started if that money were available? The problem is, it might be 2 million. I don't know what
it's
the
8
number is.
million to
No,
fix
no,
it,
I know the
problem.
whole
But
thing is,
for this
yes.
particular situation.
Yes,
The couple steps are, one, we have an area that needs assistance with water drainage. We know that. We agree that the pipe that's in the ground, that's been there for a long time, that's deteriorated, drains the yards, but it takes a long time, and it should be replaced. We agree. It doesn't matter who put it in, it's well past that, and it's not, we agree it wasn't the city. We all agreed with the property owners. So the work that was done next door with berms and stuff like that, the amount of money spent there could have been putting a pipe in from the backyard to the front yard and done the same thing. Instead, another project was done to, I'm talking. I'm talking, but in the big picture, the amount of money that's being spent, that a 6-inch pipe could have gone from the front to the back, and if there's already one there, then, excuse me, if there's already one there, it's on his side or side. When the water rises, the water is across the whole back property, so it doesn't matter where the pipe is. The flow from the back to the front is what the goal is. So the next step is finances. It would go starting in December, January, working with finance for the next year's budget
exactly.
to get created and decided. Then it goes to council for a basic idea of approval or not to do a stormwater funding project for this next year. Then it would come to Mike to determine if those funds can be allocated appropriately with the new plan. That goes to the February, March, April. The budget gets proposed, put together for council, and then gets approved for May 1 for next year. So that's the budget plan of coming up with anything. Work before that, basic engineering, we've had our engineer out there looking at it, getting ideas. We agree it's something that could be done. I'm not against spending money. So, but it's a matter of doing it the right way. The other concern is, this isn't the only project in town that needs funding. We have millions of dollars in the same type of thing. We have a list of 53 properties that want this same type of thing done. And I could name 2 of them right off the top of my head that are watching these meetings to wondering why their $50,000, $60,000 projects aren't being addressed. So the project is getting it to council, funding, and then moving forward.
All right, and right now, how much money are you talking about to get to council? Is this the $40,000 project?
This one project is 40,000.
Okay, so that's the amount we're going to be looking for.
No, you'd be looking for a project for stormwater for the next budget year, not just one project, because we have many.
Well, not
And the
just that.
economy of scale,
Right, the economy of scale.
where there's a few other projects that are just as important
And same geographically,
that
same
have,
locations.
that have home flooding issues and standing water issues that are just as important.
I've been out there without waiters even. I understand what you're saying. So,
I would have loved for this pipe to be able, if we could have rotted it out and improved the flow of drainage for this neighborhood. That's why we attempted to do it. We knew it was going to be difficult, but really, we wanted to see it start flowing better. Absolutely, that's how we got into this whole thing.
I mean, this can't be an enigma that we can't solve. You know, I don't believe that. So
I
let's,
still don't understand why we can't do it in 2 parts, why you have to do the whole thing. And I talked to the neighbor behind there to come to the meeting. He said, you know what he told me? Bob Sims lives behind me. He's got the one other section of pipe from Marion connects to my property. He said, my pipe's working. I don't need to go to the meeting. That's what he told me.
Well, it's good that we don't have to do that one. So,
I put a pipe on the other side of my house. His is on
West side.
west side, and I put a pipe from the east side.
Okay.
That helps me, but I'm still lower where it comes onto my farm.
I remember you showed me that, I understand that.
Okay.
Alderman Ludvigson, give us a little template. What should we be doing? 1, 2, 3? We can start now. To get to May, to get some work done.
Right, I mean, it's all about, nothing happens without the money, first of all. We can't do it this year, it's not in the budget, can't do it because of weather. You know, it's got to be part of a bigger, not bigger, but addressing 3 or 4 or 5 other locations geographically in the same spot. I guarantee you there's 2 places I know of one for sure, and Claire, the guy called me recently, probably called you too.
We have a few.
So this
We have
is
a few
something that's
locations
on
that-
all the locations. You're fortunate, I'm gonna say fortunate, that you have Marion behind you to say that's the problem. And you're looking at that as saying, well, now I can fix it because I know the problem. Other places just have low spots in 3 or 4 or 5 houses, and they drain.
That my yard floods, street floods, it comes up to my foundation.
This won't stop.
But it comes up to your foundation when Dorset floods, not when your backyard floods.
Yes, it does. No, it absolutely does.
So if it does, then that's
All
even better. You
right,
should
all
be able
right,
to
thank
drain
you, everyone. I have the scarecrow looking at me, and he's scaring me. I know, and they're out of order. They were kind enough to come. We asked them to come, as a matter of fact, last time. Come to every meeting was our last instruction. So thank you for coming this evening.
So what's the
And
motion here?
well, you're not going to get a motion. It's not really on the agenda. You can't get a motion.
So we can't revisit this until,
You just keep coming. But don't argue with people. This guy's working very hard. Just, you know, and you know, I'm not going to say something dumb, but all you're doing is getting water in the backyard. I got water in my basement.
no, he gets,
No, I don't care about water.
He gets water in his house.
I don't care about water on the street, I don't care.
Right.
It's coming into my basement, yes.
It's coming up
Well-
I don't care that.
Raise your-
I don't
raise-
care my yard floods, the street floods, anything.
All right, bye.
Just-
I'm doing what you're doing. Goodbye, thank you.
all right,
Mr.
so
Joe.
this won't be looked at until.
Not at all. We've got people here that are very good at looking at things. It's getting them done that's hard. It starts with money. Think about sharing on that cost of $40,000.
You know, I listened to the presenter on the budget. She said Prospect Heights is in real good shape.
You have no idea. You have no idea. Come and work, sit here for a month.
You guys had a 5.2 million net, you know, I guess you can't. dip
Carries
into
us
that.
for 7 months,
Yeah.
then we'll be out of business. So thank you.
All righty.
Mayor, that brings us to the reports.
Well, how about
Now,
Lola?
consent agenda?
Yeah, can we move up?
Yeah, let's.
Okay.
look this up.
Hold on, please. Can we have your request, or do we just take the action? Do we need to have Lola and her wonderful, supportive husband who's with her to help us along, or can we just proceed? Why don't you make a decision, Joe?
Motion, we move item 11, A and B. I make a motion, we move items 11A and B to the, to act on right now.
Second.
Amen.
Thank you. I'll set this up.
We need just a voice vote? Yeah. Let's have a voice vote on that particular issue.
You want to know what it's about at all, or?
Well, it's about Lola, right?
No, just.
I've known her I got her there. I put her in there.
Just to move it up. And all in favor?
All right, we need a motion, and we need a second. Second, please.
Second.
And a roll call, please. It's a money situation somehow. Go ahead.
Alderman Ludvigson.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Alderman Morgan Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Quinn.
Aye.
Alderman Cameron.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. And what did we motion on?
Well, that brings us to the second reading. Lola's, as you are aware, they have some good,
Excuse me. I
We
think
need
that-
to waive the first, right?
That was purely the motion to
To-
move it up.
To move
Oh,
it
I'm
up,
sorry.
Now you have
Yeah.
to,
So we need a motion to waive the first reading.
right. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Roll call, please. No, roll call. Don't need it. All right, but we will move it to a final approval.
We need a motion to approve the
Need a
waiver.
motion.
Oh, we need, why don't you do this? You know, you're so smart. Yes, right. Okay,
So we need a roll call for waiving first reading.
all right, let's have a roll call for waiver of first reading. Thank you.
Alderman Morgan Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Cameron.
What are we voting on? I'm sorry.
To waive the first reading.
Aye.
Alderman Quinn.
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Now we go ahead with, what's the item number? 11B, which is the approval of what we just talked about. So we need a motion.
So moved.
We need a
Second.
second.
Second?
Any discussion?
I got a question.
Yes.
Maureen. Regarding the layout, I've never been to this place before. How much seating are you mind coming up? How much seating are,
When you come up, identify yourself, please.
Hi, Bruce Barton, 507 West Techney Road, Arlington Heights, owner of Lola's Pizza Palace. Seating, we currently have 49 seats in the current location. We're looking to do a similar, don't exactly have a final count, but whatever we're going to be allowed by the fire chief to put in there is what we put in. This facility actually has 2 doors versus our current location where we only really have one up in the front side. So that's approximately what we're looking to do.
okay, and do you know what the, how many people can be in the little restaurant?
I don't know. There was an existing restaurant for years.
Yeah, because I see you're going to have a dance floor, so I don't know how,
Well, it has a dance floor. We don't plan on using it as a dance floor.
oh, okay.
It was an old Polish restaurant.
Oh, because I see like 16, this where it's going to be like 16 seatings over here. This is what I have, I'm looking at.
Yeah, those are existing booths that are already in the facility. We're putting some standalone tables, and then there's some booths that are already built in here. This is the bar area. This is just kind of some open, we're putting gaming.
Were you going to have like an island bar or something like that?
Yeah.
Where's that going?
That is right there. That's the existing bar. It's already in the facility.
All right, anyone else?
Yeah, just a quick question. Are you gonna have a fryer here?
Yes,
So everything, all the food you show is gonna be the same as what you have now?
yes.
Because it looked like the kitchen was really small.
It is a lot smaller, but if you know the facility we're in today, it's like 10 times too big.
Right.
It's crazy size.
I just wanted to make sure you intend on having the same menu.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We're going to cut a few items, things that don't sell as well, but the core of what we do is going to remain the same.
Pizza, sandwiches, salads.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
Okay.
we've got it all, just like Bogey and Bacall. Let's go ahead with roll call, please.
Alderman Quinn.
Aye.
Alderman Cameron.
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Aye.
Alderman Morgan Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. How am I doing so far? Good, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Joe.
Well, do you want to consider working through new business?
Sure, might as well.
Is that what came next?
I would leave if I were you.
Next item under
If
new
I could.
business is C, and we have C1 and C2, as well as the presentation of the committee tonight. It's whichever council's desire.
Joe, repeat that again, because we're all waiting for the papers.
Sure. We're at item new business C, and this is consideration of the draft cannabis ordinance. And as referenced, we were under a time commitment in order to get this notice so it can go before the Plan Commission Zoning Board. So there was an ordinance that was prior to the committees, the ad hoc cannabis committee's report. The mayor's had a preferential version, the council had a preferential version. We placed both of them on the agenda, so council, mayor can work with or take the elements of the committees, whichever your preference is.
Well, I think the preference is we read both of them as we consider them and then vote on one or two. So can we do that? Do you have a copy of the?
Their first reading, so.
Right, which we're asking which one to continue for, because we can't adopt both of them for the second reading,
Right,
so.
right.
And also, we need to meet the Plan Commission Zoning Board part two.
All right, so we have C1.
I have a question. Can we refer them both?
We just said we can.
Okay.
What is your preference, Counselor?
The preference would be to refer one of them, perhaps to get, when you're sending things down to the PZBA, you're basically sending the issue down. This is what the council or the mayor's version, whichever is preferred, to go down for the text amendment.
And
So,
obviously only one of them, so we can't do two.
and I think historically, Joe, is that right? In similar situations, we've sent just one of them down?
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
On 19
John, can we just make I mean, it's not on the agenda, so somebody's got to make a motion to adopt one, second it, and then roll call it, and then that one goes forward? Are we making a motion? We're not voting on the first reading, we're just simply saying that we want to make a motion to approve either C1 or C2, so it's a separate motion than what's shown here. There is no motion.
Right, it's to send either C1 or C2 down.
Okay.
All right, can we read number one, please?
I think we've read these, we have them. I mean, we went back and forth on these already, so I would make a motion that we approve item C2.
Second.
For passage and sending it to the ZBA.
I second it.
Well, that was you wanted to recommend, and you did. Amazing enough. So let's, so we don't have to have a first reading.
So it's just, yeah, so we would have.
You do have to have a first reading.
We would have discussion now.
That was just a recommendation.
We would have discussion.
So do we just go down the line and pick C1 or C2, because it's not really a vote?
Motion to send
John's
to
going to have a
PZBA.
motion to
Okay.
direct.
So the discussion could be having you to read the ordinance. Or we've gone right ahead with the second one.
Whatever your discussion.
All right, is there any discussion on the points of item 2? Straw poll version, so this wasn't even a... So Joe, help me, what are the points of point 2? The key points? How many locations? Is there a lounge recommendation?
My recollection, without having it in front of me, is it's one item, and help me out, there's so many.
May I jump in? Would
Yeah,
that be
sure,
helpful?
yeah.
My understanding is that this lists dispensaries, special use B2, B2A, B3, B4 districts, 750 foot setback from schools and daycares. It prohibits, or it doesn't allow for social lounges, on-site consumption, and likewise cultivation centers, craft growers, processing organizations, and infusers. And then there is a separate ordinance that is later on in the agenda that deals with the tax side of things.
So the tax is separate?
Correct.
John, just one clarification of what you said. The main difference between distances for item A and B, or 1 and 2, is they both say 750, but one of them says that the 750, that the location cannot be contiguous, even if it's less than 750 feet to a school, if it's in a larger shopping mall.
Correct, yes.
So I have a problem with the C2 ordinance, number one, because it only has one dispensary, and number two, because, and also it provides a setback for daycares, which I think is unreasonable because people can have daycares in their home. And it also is going to make it impossible for us to have any licensed dispensary because there's just daycares all over the place. I think it's just ridiculous.
How many daycares do we have in homes in Prospect Heights?
We probably have many.
Well, they're not in retail areas, and so it
They
wouldn't
may be in
apply.
retail areas. In fact, there are daycares in retail
But a
areas.
daycare has children who walk outside and walk in the neighborhood, so we don't want,
They don't walk in the neighborhoods. They are not.
that's not true, Wendy.
That absolutely is true.
No, it
They have a
isn't true.
confined area that they're
Nope,
in.
you are
That is,
incorrect.
no, I am absolutely correct.
No, I don't think
The
so.
I
day-
think so.
The daycare that is in Rocky Vanders is the one we're talking about. That's the only one there is.
Daycare there?
That center is fully fenced. No kid, no little child, no daycare child can go out of that fenced area.
That's
You go-
correct.
Go there and figure,
It's all fenced.
figure it out yourself.
It's all
And-
fenced.
Well, that's a,
Here, let me
isn't that a
finish.
doggy daycare?
Let
No.
me finish, please.
No.
Thank you. And when the kids cannot wander anywhere, they have to be picked up by an adult, typically the mom, the dad, the grandpa, or the uncle, or a sibling. So I'm not sure what you're referring to, wandering around.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm referring to, because I worked for a daycare franchise for many years. Daycare children are actually transported through a neighborhood. Sometimes it's in a little cart. A group of 6 to 10 children could be walking to a park. There was a daycare that's right now in the process, I think in Ascot Plaza over there. They're putting in a daycare, and the children will have to walk to where they play. So this is not the kind of facility that you would want by a daycare.
There's no daycare in Prospect Heights that has those kind of things. Absolutely not.
It's a state law, Wendy. They take them out for walks. That's
Hello,
law.
ladies, decorum, please. This daycare, you should go visit this one, because they're fully enclosed. They are not allowed to wander out the front door without supervision.
Correct, they have supervision.
And, you know, we better not let them walk through or past a liquor store. My God, that would be horrible. And then we better not let them walk past a tavern. Geez, that would be terrible. What are you talking about? These are little kids. That,
Well, if you think a 4-year-old child or a 3-year-old child doesn't understand the world around them, then it's been a while since you've been near a child care center. And child care centers are just as valuable schools as a public school.
I
So
disagree.
I don't understand.
They are very valuable, yes, but you're wrong about what you're saying.
No, I'm not
There are
wrong.
fenced-in areas. These children are not mobile. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, look up the state law, because daycare children are mobile. They walk
No, they're
through
not
the
mobile.
neighborhoods.
They do not, absolutely not. Not in Prospect Heights.
Thank you for your opinion. Let's move on.
The other problem I have with the C2 ordinance is that, as we said, you know, we need to determine, so there shouldn't be any caps on how many dispensaries. We have people who live in the Milwaukee Avenue area who aren't going to go to Rand Road, and the people who live on the Rand Road area who are not going to go to Milwaukee Avenue. Glenview is opted out. You have just as much ability to get revenue and to do things that are helpful to the community in that area as you are at the Rand Road area. And anyway, you have to ask for a special use, which you have to go through exceedingly difficult obstacles to get through the Planning and Zoning Board and the council to get anybody who applies for a license. So the whole idea of, well, we want to just have one is ridiculous, because we should let the market determine that. We can always determine what we want when somebody applies. But to close it off makes no sense. That is contrary to the whole idea of trying to earn revenue and also to help our community and the people who need to have access to the dispensaries for both medical purposes and otherwise. We're closing them off, and that's not right.
Mayor, can I share something with you?
One moment, please. Yes, Council. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, for clarification purposes, the ordinance before you does not include a limitation on the number. That is something that would be dealt with in a separate amendment to the business license code.
So there is, okay, so there is no limit. I thought I read there was a limit on that one.
No.
But there's no limit, okay. But it prohibits the on-site, correct?
Correct.
And it prohibits, there's no license limits on the cultivation centers, craft growers, process organizations, and infusers, correct?
There is nothing permitting those cultivation centers, craft growers, processing organizations, and infusers.
There's no license limits, correct?
Well, it's not permitted under the, it's not being permitted
It's
by
not
way
being
of this
permitted at all
ordinance.
under C2.
Correct.
So I have a problem with that because it doesn't allow for any kind of growth with respect to this. I mean, if people want to apply, they should be allowed to apply. We can always make a decision later whether we're going to allow them to do it.
All right, you have spoken, Alderman Ludwigson?
No.
You're good?
I'm good.
Okay, anyone else?
Well, I just wanted to share something with you, and Wendy kind of pointed this out. The Wheeling is going to be putting in some sort of a dispensary just north of Tuscany, so there will be coverage on Milwaukee Road if that was a concern.
Tuscany is way far away from...
Well, it's on Milwaukee.
So what? So we just let everybody else have things just to call, and we're going to say that that's good enough? That makes no sense. Tuscany is at least, what, several miles from...
No, it's not several
Oh,
miles.
it's not
but-
several miles, but
no.
it's far enough.
But it doesn't matter.
No.
You know, it's like, do you want to go to CVS or do you want to go to Walgreens? And there's a point here because most people will go the shortest route, you know, whatever's closer to their house. But not all do. We have a lot of people from Arlington Heights, from Mount Prospect and elsewhere, and I've checked this with Walgreens, come to Walgreens. And I know the doctors, I've got some inroads to doctors, and they automatically say Prospect Heights is the closest to you. They don't say Rand Road, which isn't very far, right? That CVS is closest to you. So I don't think it matters how close another area is. I don't think it has any play. They're going to go where it's easy to pull in, easy to park, and it's not easy over by Tuscany. The shopping center we're talking about is Rocky Vanders. You can pull right in. You got a stoplight. You got ease of access and ease of leaving. We can't determine where they're going to go by. Maybe nobody will come to our vendors operation. I think these are just, you know, making up things that really we don't know anything about. I don't know anything about it.
I think the other point is why are we looking to invite people to go elsewhere to another town or community to spend their money and so they can get the sales tax revenue instead of us? I mean, the whole idea here is...
I think we've heard that sales
Right.
tax, lowering the sales tax isn't logical. You're not, you know, someone said, well, there's two gas stations. One's across the street from the other, and if there's a penny difference in gas, they'll go to the one that has less, the 1 penny less. That's probably true. People do that.
That's
But who's going to go from Rand Road over to Milwaukee Avenue?
That could
No,
also be
Albany,
said, if
Albany.
you're choosing a daycare center for your child, are you going to go to the daycare center next to the pot store or the one next to a restaurant?
I don't think
I-
anybody talks like that.
Yeah, they do.
No, they don't.
I think they do.
We've got worries about pipes in the ground right now. I don't agree with anything that limits the ability to market your product. Anyway, where are we, Counselor?
So
I
I
mean-
think we have a motion and a second discussion, so the next thing to do would be vote.
And this would be on item 2?
Yes, C2.
Okay, we have a motion, we have had a second, we have had discussion, and under item C2, we need a roll call for approval or disapproval. Let's start with Madam Clerk.
Alderman Dolick,
Aye.
Alderman Ludvixson. Alderman Quinn,
Aye.
Alderman Cameron,
Aye.
Alderman Morgan Adams.
Nay.
Motion passes for 4-1. What's next?
Item 11D is the first reading of the ordinance establishing the tax on the commodity. And it's understood that we have a consensus between mayor and council of 3%.
And this is the first reading.
Correct.
And then we go right into the second reading then? The second
That'll be the next
approval?
meeting. Yeah, that's not under a time deadline, so we'll bring that back to second.
All right,
next
so we
meeting.
will only have a first reading, and there's no requirement for a vote. Any discussion? 1, 2, 3. Alderman Dolick.
No.
Alderman Ludvixson.
No.
Alderman Wendy Morgan.
No.
Alderman Quinn.
No.
Alderman Cameron.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on. Well, we're good. We don't need a vote. Go.
Item E, estimate of proposed 2019 property tax levies. Mike, do you want to say a few words about this?
The Truth in Taxation Act requires that at least 20 days prior to passage of the tax levies, that the city must estimate the amount of the tax levy. To the memo I've provided, I've attached a schedule. The schedule pretty much mirrors what we've adopted the last 2 years. The only change to it is we've increased the police pension levy by 4.5%, which hopefully allows us to take advantage of any growth that we see in the tax rolls to provide more funding towards our police pension fund levy and reduce the share that's coming from the general fund. Overall, the levy that's being proposed this year is 2.81% less than the levy that was proposed last year, which meets all of the requirements of truth in taxation and will not subject us to any tax caps. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Do we have to approve this, or we, Counselor?
No, I think it's
No, we're just talking. All right, questions?
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Last year, did we decide to do zeros? There was a reason you had said that we needed to do zeros for 1, 2, 3, and 4 versus just not levying?
just from, and I don't know if it's Kevin's personal opinion, Kevin responded to us when I asked if we had to file
Right.
ordinances that have zero. He said, if we don't file them with zero, someone may assume that we did not file it. If you file it with a zero, it shows that your intent was to file it with a zero. So once they're in place, it's just easy for us to do it for a while.
Okay. And then I'm just doing the math really quick on this EAV. And my question is, on the police pension, why not 4.99? Are we going to get everything at 4.5, even the loss and, what do you call it, loss and cost?
Pat, we have received it all in the past.
So we get the maximum.
It's a matter of not pushing it to the point that it may push us over.
But if we ask for that, does it push us over if we don't know, nobody knows the math of it until it's
done.
Until the EAV is determined, right?
Well, I understand where you're going. I've just looked back at past ones that have been there, it's never been an issue, so I've just
Never got
continued on
close.
that
Okay.
rationale.
Okay, just curious.
No, good question.
Anyone else? There being none, Joe, we can move on.
One thing, we're still under new business, that was the last item of new business.
No,
No, I mean of new business, so of category 11.
No?
No, we already,
Did we do the,
we just did it.
Right. So I guess I'm bringing this up because it's under new business. I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to write a limiting ordinance on the number of licenses for cannabis dispensary, similar in nature that we do for liquor licenses.
We just,
Second.
we just, hold on a second. We just agreed to adopt the council's, the C2.
Right, but there is no limiting number. If you read that C2, there is no limiting number in the ordinance. All we did was allow, as I see it, a special use provision in B2, 2A, and 2B, 3, and 4 that says you can have a dispensary in those, doesn't talk about how many you can have.
All right, so I don't think it's on the agenda, and I don't think you can vote for it. I don't think you can make a
I'm not asking
motion.
that to be on the agenda. I'm asking for a motion to direct staff to have council bring to the next meeting an ordinance that limits the number of cannabis licenses to 1. So we're not voting on to do that. We're just voting on whether we should direct staff to do that.
I don't think it's totally improper because staff is
improper.
already, it is improper because you've already voted to have the C2 sent to the PZBA.
But this has nothing to do with C2.
I think it does.
why didn't you put the number in the ordinance that we have?
Because sorry, Mayor.
Alderman Ludwigson, we could have said.
Well, I mean, go ahead.
three.
I'm just, John will explain it because I brought this up about the numbers and.
All right, what do we have?
So the issue of the business licenses, that is not something that goes before the PZBA. It is dealt with under an amendment to the business license code.
All right, thank you.
Right now, if the PZA would this be correct? If PZBA approves item 2, there could be no dispensary at all because there's no license to operate in Prospect Heights with one.
Correct.
So, you know what? I will withdraw that motion. So I'm not making that motion. Sorry, I didn't fully understand it. If the mayor would like to make it, or Wendy would like to make it, they can.
So you want
I don't, Wendy, you jump on this and you were wrong when you were talking about it. Just sometimes, even though we disagree on things, just understand, I understand the process, okay? It's not my first year here. So I'm not fighting with you on this issue. I'm just saying, if we don't do this, you're not going to have it. Do you want
Well,
to have it?
I don't know that, let me ask this question. Is that a problem, council?
That's a problem.
If there are no licenses,
No. If we don't have, if we have no cap on the number of licenses, is that going to, how is that going to impact us?
The ordinance had nothing to do with caps.
so in order to have, okay, so C2 had nothing to do with business licenses. That, we do that by way of a completely separate ordinance.
Okay,
And it would deal with amending the business licensing part of the city code.
okay.
And it could be to amend it such that there are 1 licenses, or if the council wants 50 licenses, whatever the council wants.
But why I have a question. Do we need to decide that now?
Right this moment, no. I mean, it's something that you want to get in place sooner rather than later.
Before, or by November 25th or December 9th?
Sure,
Okay.
yeah.
But John, if somebody comes to us to apply for a ZBA, a special use, and they have to put down what they're going to do, right? They're going to say, I want to be a bar, I want to be a Thornton's, I want to be this, and we say, yes,
Correct.
we have a license for that, so you're applying for that. They won't be able to apply for a
Correct.
special use.
So we have to provide for the license, and we provide for the ability or the availability of the license in advance?
Correct.
Correct. I
We can't
believe
just
that.
say that okay, so we have to have a number?
Oh, I'm sorry, John.
I just don't
Yeah, mean,
understand,
just-
that's all.
Just for practical purposes, my recommendation would be to have a number, yes.
To have a number, okay. So can we direct staff to draft the ordinance and let the council decide what the number is when it comes to council? Like leave that blank?
Well, why can't we do that now if we're going to do that? I
Well, we-
recommended 3 for a month and a half, 6 months. Someone has recommended 0. Well, we're not going to get a license with a 0 request, I don't think.
No, I didn't recommend 0, I'm just telling you how many you're authorized to issue.
Yeah, I
So,
think.
just so you know. I'm
All
just being
right, no,
fair
I
about
hear
it.
you, Pat, I hear what you're saying, that's why I was asking council, and I get it. So my question is, can we authorize staff and city attorney to draft an ordinance that has us leaving the number blank and letting us determine that at the next meeting? But drafting the ordinance requiring a certain number, but not put the number in.
It would be probably better practice to have 1, 2, 3, whatever the number is, then that would be voted upon and amended if need be.
So let me ask this question. If we voted for 3 and we wanted 4, can we amend it to 4?
We're not voting right now.
I mean, I know, but if we're directing staff to do 1 as opposed to 2 or
Just-
3, can we amend it then up to 3?
If the council, if there's a motion to amend an ordinance, you can amend it to however many you want,
Proposed
right?
ordinance.
All right.
Oh.
So I would like to make a motion to direct staff to draft an ordinance that has 3 licenses available for dispensaries.
You know, I've liked that for video gaming, and we've held to it, 3 places that are standalone video gaming places. I think 3 is a fair number. We're not going to get 3, in my opinion. We may not get 2, and we may not get 1. But at least we're asking for something, and they can say, well, all we really have left for Prospect Heights is 1, and we get our 1. And then everybody's happy, apparently. So 3, to me, is a magic number in my mind. Any other comments?
And we have 3 different areas potentially for dispensaries. We don't know if we're going to get anything. We don't know if we're going to get any
Right, that's what I just said.
applications.
Yes, you're right.
And we can always determine once there's an application whether we want to allow it or not as a special use.
Right. The reason I thought of 3 is because the east and the west are far apart, and the north, being at Palatine and Elmhurst, the owner there would readily, starting tomorrow, build a new building to meet any requirements that should be met. He's willing to spend the money to start construction anytime we ask him to, if we need it.
So, Mr. Mayor, I believe there was a motion.
Yeah, the motion was to direct staff to prepare an ordinance regarding the number of licenses that we're requesting. And my answer is 3, and apparently I can vote on some of these issues that I have here. But I won't do that. Let's call for a motion to approve. That's the staff,
I'm
right?
sorry,
There's a
there was
motion.
already a motion. There was a motion by,
Okay. We had a second? We need a second? Why do we need a second to direct staff?
for any motion.
Or to write a motion where nobody's approving it until it comes to us. We do need a motion. And we do need a second, please, anyone. Let me see if I can second it. No,
Just to clarify, this is the original motion for 1.
that's what they've been talking about.
I'm sorry, this is a motion for 3 licenses, is my understanding.
No, he's talking about the 1 motion already on board and the 2 motion already on board and 2 being the approved motion by the council.
Just so,
Just-
so I'm,
Nobody seconded it, let's stop playing this game and just, if I would.
Let's start with you.
Let's start with me. I think it's pretty clear, Nick, we could sit here, and I don't mind doing it, you know it, till midnight, and go back and forth on this, that you're gonna get an affirmative vote if you do one. And there's no secret, Wendy, with this too, just like our liquor licenses, if the council wants to add another 4 o'clock license, all we have to do is pass and increase the number of those licenses.
But if you don't have the license available,
The
people
state
can't
doesn't
apply
care
for
how
it.
many licenses we have. Unless the mayor and Joe are gonna tell me that there are 4 people right now who have come to the city and have ZBA, special uses, there's no reason to have more than one. We don't have anybody coming to
I
us.
understand we have
Well,
at least 2 or 3
stop, please.
people
We don't want to
interested.
backtrack either, sir. Why
I only
why
want,
backtrack?
Joe, I mean,
Ask
Nick,
for
I only
3
want
and it's
one.
over with.
No.
Why, I don't understand why you only want one.
You only want one.
You only want, you want to make only
$160,000
so
a
much
year.
money. You
How
don't want to
exciting
make
is
double
that?
or triple the money.
That's all I'm looking for.
That makes no sense.
Well,
And it doesn't matter, you know, I mean, the point is if they're available, they're available. It doesn't mean people are going to get them.
Have we ever not approved a special use?
I think many times we've not
Has
approved.
theory
the
been
special
approved?
use.
not yet.
I told
Not
you hell
yet.
would, I told you hell would freeze over before I'd vote for that. So don't say that special uses can be denied like somehow or another, they just,
They can be denied.
they can, but when you have that many open, chances are they're gonna be filled. People are gonna come to us
I
to
don't
do it. So
not
if,
necessarily.
you want 3 anyway, so you would want 3 people to come to us. I don't want 3. I don't know what the rest of the council thinks.
You
I
don't care
want
what,
3.
you don't care about the revenue that we would earn in this, because we have, or a city who doesn't have any revenue, who has money
Alderman-
problems, so we can't
Alderman
fund anything.
Morgan Adams, I'm not sure you understand the revenue side because you're in favor of groweries and infusers. They bring no revenue to us. Do you understand that?
I do understand that.
So-
Nobody-
so don't
nobody's
talk about
talking about
revenue.
lounges.
But-
Nobody's talking about
No,
lounges.
no one's talking about lounges right now.
Right now, we're talking about a facility. Well, then we can't do that, and PZB will be hamstrung to try to get this thing in on time.
I'd like to make a motion that we set up a licensing system that would allow for 1 dispensary.
Second.
Just for clarification, the motion, is
Who
this to
said that?
direct staff to
Correct.
draft up a
To
ordinance?
create the ordinance to bring to the next city council meeting, the ordinance that would establish a number of dispensary licenses in Prospect Heights to 1.
Second.
We have a motion, we had a second even.
I seconded it twice.
I said that. Okay, let's have a roll call.
Alderman
Wait, I
Ludwig.
have a question before the
Yeah.
roll call.
Yes, ma'am.
So if he brings, not like, it's not likely to happen here, but if the ordinance is drafted for 1, we can amend it the next time we have a council meeting to 2. Am I correct?
I don't think so. This paperwork is in process.
So if the council approves 1 business license, and then at a later time decides that it wants 10, 15, 100 business licenses, it can absolutely do that.
Okay.
All right, we're looking for a roll call, please.
Alderman Morgan Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Quinn.
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Alderman Cameron.
Aye.
We have a motion that, I'm sorry, did I get a 4-1 or 5-0? 5-0, thank you. Joe?
Well, it's mayor and council's preference where we go to the agenda next. We've got the consent agenda, we've got reports to do, as well as
Consent.
workshop
Let's
items.
go to consent. agenda.
Consent,
We passed
okay.
it up.
Item 9. Consent agenda, and if there's no items to be removed, we can consider them.
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second?
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any long-term discussion here? There being none, let's take a roll call.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Alderman Morgan Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Quinn.
Aye.
Alderman Cameron.
Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Mayor, would you like to go through your reports, or the other option is,
Go home.
well, we're getting there, slowly but surely, or we have workshop topics as well.
What's next in line after 9?
Oh, we're all over
Do
the
we have
board.
11 FGHI, JKL?
Yeah, that was.
Well, I thought we did that with.
We
when
did that
Mike,
already.
No,
gave us-
wait, hold it.
They're all first readings.
Wait,
anyway.
If I could, please, just to save us a little bit of an issue. We did the estimate of the property taxes, which we need to do. Items F, G, H, and I have to be moved to the next board meeting before we could do first reading.
Oh,
Okay.
We have to show them, and that's my fault, I put in first reading, but they really should have just been for
So
informational
they'll be
purposes.
tabled?
Because,
no, just leave it.
no, it's just, we just need to move them to the 25th, so final approval doesn't come within that 20 days that we have to
Your
wait.
memo said that.
Okay,
It did
that's,
say that this was
so do we
approved.
table then?
No,
No.
Oh, we don't?
no, we're just showing them.
We're just
It's
showing them, that's
Informational
fine.
purposes.
Okay.
Okay.
Same thing for JK&L?
Correct.
Okay.
And we have, to wrap up, we have either the reports or the workshop
Well,
topics.
let's entertain the reports that will be very short and maybe none. Let's start with Mark Roscoe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Real short. We had snow today, our first real event of the season. It's going to get down to 10 degrees tonight, 8 degrees tomorrow night, and then we're going to get a little warm up. Our crew started this morning around 5 a.m. and went to about 5:30 this afternoon, plowing snow and clearing snow and ice. We're in Target for the holiday season coming up, putting up lights. And a new, good, positive thing, a gentleman by the name of Mike Hoffman started today. He's taken over for where Paul Miller was doing. Paul retired. Mike Hoffman comes to us. He's a ASE certified mechanic. He's got some good mechanical skills. He's got a good attitude. Today was his first day, and we look forward to him being with us for about another 30 years. So that's the Public Works update today, sir.
Thank you. Who's next?
City Clerk?
That would be me. I want to let everyone know, sorry for being late today. Just had a overwhelming day, but sorry about that. I wanted to just make a quick announcement and some of my own comments about the cannabis, but we have a holiday tree lighting ceremony at 5 p.m. Saturday, December 1st, at the Park District Morava Center. And the other event, the Chicago Executive Airport has also a holiday party, but that's not a public event, but that's at 5 p.m. on December 5th at the Hilton Hotel. Our next city council meeting workshop session, that's on a Tuesday, November 11th. And, I know I can't vote here, but I couldn't help but listen to some of these comments about the cannabis and the passion around it. I had heard that Wheeling really hasn't really placed any real restrictions on how many licenses or how many dispensaries. They're quite passionate about helping their community. And the reason we had created a committee was to listen to our constituents. And I'm just sitting here, I don't feel that's really happening here. It's not a reflection of what our community wants anyway. So just some thoughts as we move along, and I know we've made motions, et cetera, but it's something for the future to really think about. Are we listening to what the committee members and the nurse and other people here who understand the opioid crisis and the fact that literally a lot has changed in the 50 to 60 years about that topic to begin with, and there are many ways that people can abuse any kind of a substance, but it's not a reckless decision in any case due to the fact that the more you take away, the more people will want to do the opposite that we don't really want. But I don't see that happening. That's my opinion. And the committee, I would hope we would have had more respect to how they had reflected and worked hard on that. Lastly, too, I almost forgot, if you can correct me, Joe, the sidewalk on Schoenbeck, that's been delayed till spring, correct?
That was going to be my report.
Oh, okay, I'm
That's all right.
sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
Everyone's
Fine.
asking
Yeah.
me as I take my trash out,
Yeah,
they
that's
wave
right.
to me, because I live on Schoenbeck, so I just wanted
No
to mention
problem.
that. So, and then going a little bit back to the cannabis was, I don't feel this is just a tax revenue decision. I think we've thrown some of those comments too. We have to weigh out a lot of things when we think about that over time, it is what the market will want. We're surrounded by it. It is going to be legal. And it's not just about the money, it's about the need. And our community does have a lot of seniors. So it's true, you know, they want some comfort in how they can get what they need and not just one place. And this is future planning. We shouldn't be looking at what we did in the past, that we have one Walgreens. Well, maybe that was a mistake. I don't know why. I don't remember the whole sequence of events there, but we're looking forward, not backwards, in how we plan things. So just wanted to kind of regroup and summarize what I've been hearing, and the fact that I'm a service person here too. I don't vote, but I wanted to at least say, in summary of all the things I have heard, I do feel a little hurt that the committee's voices weren't reflected as much. It just seems like it's more of an individual choice at the council. So please be mindful of why we had a committee and the voices that came out, and the decisions, and obviously their passion that was shared amongst all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next, Joe?
Alderman, or City Treasurer Tibbetts.
We fooled you. There's nobody here, so just in time.
Well, I had a nice short 15-minute report, but I guess I'm going to have to cut it down a little bit.
You got a minute and a half.
Minute and a half, right. Actually, one of the things I wanted to do was compliment the newsletter. I think the newsletter this time was really great. We covered the 2020 census, and that's was the theme of my article, as a matter of fact, and also the inside stuff was all good. And I learned something. I didn't know that we had to say that was each person missed was $1,500 to the city. That's a big number. So it kind of got my attention to bring it up, because not everybody actually reads this newsletter. I'm sorry to tell you, but we need to we really need to emphasize it as much as we can, and that's why I'm speaking about it right now. That the census is extremely important to the city, and that we need to do everything we can to be mindful of it, and try to encourage people that we know to volunteer to get out and help count the number of people, the number of souls that are going to be in Prospect Heights on April 1st. So whatever you guys think about and want to suggest, also, think about our video capabilities, and if anybody wants to do a presentation in front of the green screen, or help put together another PowerPoint, or do something to help create a lot more awareness about that issue. So that's one. The other thing was I wanted to talk about city water, and not to belabor the point, but obviously we heard a lot about it this evening from the developers that wanted to get at city water from Wheeling. The travesty of that whole thing is that not only will Wheeling not give water to them from their distribution system, but there's a transmission main, which I think is either 48 inches in diameter or 60 inches in diameter. It goes right under that, right past that whole area, under the bike path, really along the ComEd line.
Right.
It's unbelievable. I mean, there's so much water there, it's insane. And so for them not to be able to get water, or us not to be able to figure out a way to distribute water to our citizens for not only potable drinking,
fire protection, economic development, it all works together. Why it's been removed from the agenda for our topic, I don't understand, but it should be, I think it should be a permanent issue on our discussion potential from now until we get it done. And I'd just like to say, the last time I spoke about it, I asked that any of the aldermen that wanted to sit down and talk about city water and learn about some of the things that I know about, which I'm sure that most of you don't know, you would learn a lot by sitting down with me and looking at just some of the stuff that I have accumulated over the years. It's just something I'm offering to you as long as I'm still here and still alive, breathing, kicking, and everything else. I mean, I think you should take advantage of that. And so far, nobody has called me up and said, listen, let's meet on Saturday, or let's meet on Sunday, or whatever. I'm available most of the time, except for the last few weeks I've been sidelined in Arizona. Poor me. But I'd like to go back there right now. But nevertheless, I mean, I really am passionate about that, as you all know, and I really think there are solutions to it. There has to be. For the health of our, and the longevity of Prospect Heights, there has to be a solution to that. So that I'm not going to talk about NATOA tonight. I'll talk about that some other time. I'd also like to say I'm a veteran. I'd like to thank all of the other veterans for their service. And that one of the things about being a veteran, that in the time that I was in the service was during the Vietnam War. I heard somebody on TV, a guy that was a lot older than me, of course, but he was talking about the fact that he had, for the first time in his life, been thanked for his service. And I'm thinking, well, you know, how is that possible? But it is possible because when soldiers were drafted into the Vietnam War, they many times often didn't want to go because of the war, not because they didn't want to serve the country. And when they came back, they were criticized for having been in the war. And it was just a horrifying situation. I was never thanked for being in the military until just recently, really, until like the last 5 or 10 years maybe. But, and that wasn't the point, that's not my point. I'm just saying it's the guys that were in Vietnam, I think, just have an extra layer of hurt for that experience. So we want to thank them for their service, especially. And that's all I have.
Amen, brother. Thank you.
Alderman Cameron?
Joanne, the clarification on the tree lighting, you said December 1st, and that's a Sunday. Do you mean November 30th?
I read it off the report.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's the 30th. Other day.
Thanks.
Sorry.
But otherwise, I have nothing. I have no report.
All right, move on then.
Let's see, Alderman Quinn?
I just want to thank all the servicemen in our neighborhood. There were some events throughout Ward 2 for veterans today, and so I do want to thank them, including Rich Tibbetts for his service. And that's it.
You forgot me.
Oh, and thank you, too, for your service.
I knew you
And
would.
anybody else who served, thank you.
Everybody on TV, too.
Right.
All right, who's next?
Alderman Morgan Adams.
I want to ditto Alderman Quinn's remarks, and I want to thank all the veterans for their service. We've had many events in Prospect Heights today, and I think it's a wonderful thing, and I really appreciate the service that our veterans have done for our country.
Alderman Ludvigsen?
I have no report, but I ditto what Alderman Morgan Adams and Quinn had said about our veterans.
Alderman Dolick?
Yes, just one item. Tomorrow evening, there will be an informational open house regarding the residential sound installation program that was discussed at the joint meeting with the airport. There will be representatives there that can discuss who qualifies, details of that program. It's at the Ramada Inn on Milwaukee Avenue tomorrow night from 6 to 8. And again, yes, thank you to all of our veterans for your service. And that's all I have.
Chief Zalaki?
Couple items. Reference to Veterans Day. I'm not a veteran. We have several officers on our department are. We attended a couple nice ceremonies. Mayor was also there. MacArthur School put one on last week for any of the veterans in town, the kids served us breakfast, put on a nice program for the veterans. I was there in support. And then today, we had a mass at St. Al's, and after mass, we had a little breakfast too, which was very nice, and several of my officers who were veterans were in attendance there. We have our girls' club started in October. It was the third Wednesday. Girls 11 to 17 years old. It's a mentor program after school with our 2 female officers, Jocelyn Garza and Colleen Zitkus. So they started it up. We had 12 girls, and they're going to be meeting next week, and it was really successful. Also last week, we had our first Chief's Chili Cook-Off. We had 9 contestants at the station for chili, and we invited all the city employees that were around to come over and sample, and we took a vote. And our winner was Pablo Martinez, our desk officer, who I talked into doing it. He never made chili ever, and he went online, got a recipe, and he ended up winning.
Wow.
So, and then I wasn't here last Monday, or last council meeting. I attended the International Chiefs Conference down at the McCormick Place. It was the 126th year of the International Chiefs Conference. They have educational sessions, they have vendors. They had 14,000 officers from all over the world that attended this. They have different locations throughout the country, and this year happened to be in Chicago. They usually do it about every 5th year, so it was nice to go and attend. And Mark Polier went with me, and I was able to have some of my sergeants go too, just to have them come. It was a really neat experience to see officers from all over the world. So that's all I have.
Deputy Clerk, please.
No report, thank you.
Finance Director Sharm, please.
No further report.
Dan Peterson is out. Peter Falcone.
No report.
Mark, we've covered. My report is yes, as the city clerk alluded to, we have postponed the construction of the Schoenbeck sidewalk, the east side of the street between Marion and Camp McDonald. We came out of the starting block a little bit late with IDOT. By the time they had the contractors meeting, it was December 15th. Usually it takes a contractor a few weeks to mobilize. Based on the weather, I think it was a good call because we would have started a project with that we wouldn't. I don't think we would have been able to finish until the spring. So. And that leaves you, Mr. Mayor.
Question on Plaza Drive. What happened there? We started and had to stop, right?
Yeah, we've got a weather delay there too. So hopefully we'll get some warmer weather. They can't pave in cold weather. That's and then if it gets too late, you run into the situation where the asphalt plant's closed. So the big mare in the sky needs to give us some warm weather.
I'll work on it.
All right.
You know, Chief, you didn't mention that my Army uniform still fits.
Yeah, I did make a comment. I said to the mayor, I said, boy, your uniform still fits. He says, actually, I'm a lot less than when I was in the military.
Yeah.
So he did look pretty sharp with his bombardier jacket on and
I needed
all his
to hear
other
that.
outfits, so.
Could we have the record show that our city clerk did attend this meeting and came a few minutes late, 6:45? 6:40, I'll take it. All right. What's left? That's all I have.
Brings us to workshop topics, beginning with 12A, liquor license code review.
Well, Joe and Mike and Peter, we've been reviewing that code again and again, but this time it came down to a situation that I'm not sure the people that want the code changed understand that there would be a loss of revenue. Because if you reduce the cost of a, let's say, a 12 o'clock license, 2 o'clock license to a 12 or a 10, whatever, we lose revenue in between every single year. And my contention has always been two. One, why are we able, why is it our job to tell them they can be open and then they don't really open? they don't really open is really not our problem. That's what they do. And they applied for a later liquor license that cost them more money. If they don't open, I could not worry about that at all. That's not our job to tell them how to run their business.
Mr. Mayor,
So-
can we do one thing to have something come out of this? Can we become a 2 o'clock town at least? For God's sake, can we get away from 3 AM licenses for
Why?
Chinese restaurants?
Why are you against that? I've not understood that. You did say
Ask the
when you were
mayors,
young.
ask the mayors around us, ask them all why they don't have
I
3 o'clock
went to
licenses.
Wheeling's code.
They don't have 3 o'clock licenses.
They have quite a few.
They do.
Can
Many
you tell
more.
me, they
many
do
more.
not, they have a clause that says no more
Well,
after
I
a
think
certain
you
date.
should go
They're
to-
not allowed to have any more 3 o'clock. I just,
You should go to Wheeling then. I just don't think we can afford the loss of money. And we don't have that many. I mean,
you know what, then I'll just do this by trying to get the council, whenever a license comes up, to say unless we, if I can sway the council to saying only issue 2 o'clock licenses, I'll do it that way then. Just doesn't make any sense. I mean, we made a decision not to have strip joints in town. We made a decision not to have any more
This is
4
nothing
AM
like a strip
licenses.
joint, come on.
If you could license it, you would, I'm sure. I'm sure you would, but
That's
the council, and this kind of goes to what
that's
Joanne had said about
that's
the council
insulting.
listening
That is
to
insulting.
the committees.
That is
We
insulting.
are the council, we decide what we want to do.
Yeah.
And I guess going forward, then we just
No,
have to
you and
legislate item by
Zimmerman
item.
wrote that whole thing. No council wrote it, the one that you're trying to get passed. And
No, Mike was not, that was Kevin. Kevin and I worked on that.
that's not what we have, but okay.
If you don't like it because Mike wrote it, then let's have
No, I
John
could
pen
care
his name
less.
to it.
It just has nothing to do with Mike, it has to do with income.
All right.
And I don't think you ever understood the income problem. To throw away $1 million on a land sale, to do the Aetna deal, not do the Allstate deal, that's
Oh,
terrible
God.
stuff. That's a lot of money. To not save $30,000 on Plaza Drive, that's a lot of money. Here's a deal, we could have fixed the guy's pipe with 30 grand or a little more. So no, I don't agree with you. So we did, we're calculating what the revenue loss will be, and Mike's working on it.
Well, let me for the record say, my intention is to keep that revenue neutral. So whatever we have to change license cost-wise, we'll do that in order to keep it neutral. I just want to move away from the late hours. So don't say that I'm saying it because I'm trying
We
to
just raised the
cut.
prices last year.
I don't want to increase the price. I don't want to decrease
Well,
the
how
price.
are you gonna keep it neutral?
We figure it out. Nick, like you said, is this a problem we can't solve? I mean, you're a guy of solving problems.
I wish you'd meet with me at noon instead of midnight. That would be more interesting to both of us. Anyway, so we're working on it. I did say I'd have a report this
Okay, good.
council session. That's my report. I'm very concerned about the revenue, loss of revenue.
Okay.
I mean,
We
the
both are.
Thorntons really have to shut down to 12. I mean, what was that all about? They're open 24 hours. Doesn't even meet your argument of how they're not open when they have the license.
Correct.
Doesn't make any sense.
I agree with you, but it's just, you want to zig, I want to zag, so we're just two different
Well, I'll tell you
thoughts
what,
on how it goes.
I'm done zigging by the end of the
Oh, I don't
term.
think I don't think you're done zigging. You got a lot of zig left in you, Nick.
All right, guys.
And you're right, because that's why we're here. We got to this point with those numbers because of me and being able to persuade the council to do what I'd like to do. That's not always been the case, of course, with you, but
Of course not.
it hasn't been. You've turned down a lot of my stuff. So anyway, that's going to be my recommendation. It's going to be $1 value, and we'll have the council vote. That's fine. I don't agree with a lot of things the council votes on. I don't say anything. I'm willing to move on. What else do we have?
We have the 2020 census, and one item that I'd like to bring to the mayor and council's attention, because we're getting in the point of vehicle sticker season. We have a precedent, 10 years ago, I think it was Mark brought in a vehicle sticker that had the census of that time. And we thought, staff thought that might be an effective way that everybody is reminded about the census. And we thought, different years, Mayor, we've honored the fire
Right.
district, the park district, I think other things. That, for this year, it might be worthwhile, because that's gonna be on everybody's vehicle, that the theme of it be,
Well, let's get something drawn up and see what
Okay.
it looks like.
okay.
It's a
We'll,
great
we'll
idea.
we'll work with that. We've got some ideas on that. Presentations, I continue to make presentations. I'll be doing an item at the tree lighting event. We had one last week at Rob Roy that was canceled. But also, I could also use some help from the community for these things too. It's evenings and weekends and so forth, so.
Right,
And that's all we have about the census.
okay. What's next?
Item C is staggered elections.
Kevin wrote up a staggered
Yeah.
election.
Yeah, he
piece.
did, and he updated it from, I think he did it last year too. So-
Let's get it presented to the council and let them vote on it.
I agree, makes sense.
I didn't ask you that, by the way.
Okay,
But
That's
I'll let
okay.
you know if I agree with you later.
fine.
All right, thank you. So let's do that.
Okay, we'll put that on the agenda for
Yeah.
next time. And that brings us to warrants.
The approval of expenditures, approval of warrants, the total was $175,450.32. Wire payments, payroll posting, $159,244.65. September Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, $17,203.93, which brings the total warrant to $351,898.90.
Motion to approve.
I second.
Who said that?
Cameron.
It's my job. Motion to approve?
Okay with that?
I made a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Ms. Cameron, Alderman Cameron seconded it.
I didn't hear it, but thank you. Any discussion? There being none.
I second.
Roll call, thank you. That was Alderman Quinn, though, wasn't
I haven't opened my mouth.
it? Was that really Cameron miming you, I think? Okay, so where are we? Roll call.
Roll call. Alderman Cameron,
Aye.
Alderman Dolick,
Aye.
Alderman Morgan Adams,
Aye.
Alderman Ludvigson, Alderman Quinn.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Motion to adjourn, is that next?
That's the last item.
Do you have any public comment?
Yeah, we'll ask the entire public group here. There's 112 of them out there. There's no public comments from the public. And what else? That's it, right?
That's it.
All right. Motion to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn, so moved.
Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Good night, you all.
Yes, good night.